Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Was in a Sudden Political Marriage. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 25, Surprises and Shopping. Temari's nose twitched as the scent of frying bacon drifted into the bedroom, dragging her from her slumber. Her eyes widened in alarm as her stretches told one of her babies that it was time to tap dance on her bladder. Rushing to the bathroom as fast as she could in her current plus size, her still sleepy brain registered that she didn't remember going to bed. Taking care of her morning routines and deciding she was just going to stick to her robe, she set off downstairs to verbally smack down her idiot husband for just taking off after he'd been placed in a damn coma. She grumpily made her way into the kitchen, but her mood melted away when she saw Naruto concentrated on making what seemed to be a breakfast tray for her. Before she could really think of anything, she found herself wrapped around his back and crying. Naruto was off in his own little world as he stared at the bacon, trying to will it into cooking faster, until he found himself trapped in an unbreakable bear hug by a sobbing Temari. At that point he was focused more on trying to breathe and wondering what the hell was up with Temari. Waiting for her to loosen her grip a bit so he could at least turn around and hug her back, he couldn't help wondering if maybe he should have left a note or something. After a few minutes, Temari managed to clear some of her emotions, at least enough to loosen her grip, and she was pleasantly surprised when Naruto turned and held her. Reaching up against her now slight height advantage, he gently tugged her head down so that their foreheads touched. Locking her eyes on his, she could see both worry and affection in their depths. Closing her eyes, she relaxed in the warmth of his arms. "Temari-chan?" he asked in a low, concerned voice. "What's wrong?" She shook her head slightly, not breaking contact with him, and squeezed him tightly again. "I was really worried," she finally whispered. "When I looked outside last night, I thought you were dead." Naruto replied, not having a better response. "Well, I can tell you about what happened, but how about I do it while you eat? I know you have to be hungry." Nodding, she reluctantly released him and moved to sit down at the table. She didn't take her eyes off of him while he finished making her breakfast, and he would occasionally pause what he was doing to give her reassuring smiles. It wasn't until after he'd brought the tray to her and set it out that she noticed the small creature sitting at the table watching her intently. Accustomed to the odd things that happened around her husband, she merely raised an eyebrow before beginning to eat. She figured Naruto would get around to explaining, and she really was hungry. Sitting down across from Temari, Naruto considered what to tell her before mentally shrugging and deciding that she might as well know everything. Taking his time to try to make sure he explained everything thoroughly, he noted that the longer he spoke, the more exasperated his wife became. "So," she said, toying with a piece of bacon, her appetite diminished by Naruto's story. "A S-class missing nin, who according to you is actually still loyal to his village, showed up last night and mind-raped you as a means of passing on a warning?" She palmed her face and muttered under her breath before looking at him again. "Only you, Naruto, only you. Hey, it's not like I try to have these sorts of things happen to me," he said defensively. "They just sort of, well, do." "I know," Temari replied flatly. "Frankly, I'm just amazed at how diverse the trouble that finds you can be." "Heh," Naruto said sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck in his usual manner. "Well, I suppose that leads me to Fukasaku here. I guess that the toads want to train me for what's coming, but I really wanted to talk to you before I agreed to anything." Temari narrowed her eyes, looking between Naruto and Fukasaku. "I'm guessing there is more to it than training if you want to talk to me about it," she finally said. "All right, lay it on me." "Well, apparently they can't fully train me until I get older, but they want to train me at Mount Mayaboku, and I don't know how long that will take. Naruto-kun here wanted to know if you wanted to come with." Fukasaku broke in when Naruto took too long to get to the point for his taste. "As a toad summoner, you would be welcome. The other option is that you remain behind and we summon Naruto-kun in the mornings and return him at night." Temari tapped her finger on the table as she considered the options. "Will there be something for me to do there?" Naruto shrugged and looked at Fukasaku, who was watching Temari carefully. "In your condition, not really," the elder toad finally replied. "There are perhaps a few jutsu you could learn, but you will never have the chakra reserves necessary for the training Naruto will be enduring." "I see," Temari sighed. "As much as I would prefer to keep an eye on my knucklehead husband, I believe I must refuse your offer for now, Fukasaku-sama." She rubbed her stomach with a small smile. In the future, I reserve the right to change my mind, of course. I look forward to it. Fukasaku replied with a smile and a small bow. You have a good one here, Naruto-kun, I like her. Naruto's smile lit up the room. Yeah, Temari-chan's pretty awesome, he agreed happily. Totally makes up for the whole married against my will thing. The sound of chopsticks snapping drew both Naruto and Fukasaku's attention to Temari, who was glaring murder at her husband. Suddenly finding it a great time to leave, the toad turned to Naruto hastily. Well, it will take a bit to get things ready for you, Naruto-kun. Bye now. Watching the old toad dispel himself in a poof of smoke, Naruto flinched when he peeked over at a steaming Temari. That came out sounding worse than I meant, he said, inching towards the door. I'm very happy to be married to such a beautiful, kind and loving kunoichi like you. Growling, Temari got up from the table and stalked across the room at him. Closing in on him, she noticed him gulp and prepared to bolt before she broke out in a wide smile. We both know that it was me who was married against their will, she said sweetly while patting his cheek. Right. Naruto hastily nodded his agreement and let Temari lead him back to the table, rather confused by the emotional whiplash. So I've been thinking lately, Temari said after sitting Naruto down and taking her own seat. We had a really bad week recently, and it was mostly because we had a problem communicating. After the mission, why didn't you talk to me or even on the way home? I was waiting for you to come to Tibet on the trip back so I could talk to you, but you stayed away and it frustrated me. Naruto scratched his face nervously. Well, you seemed really mad whenever I looked at you, Temari-chan, and I didn't want to make you even more angry with me. I was hoping that you'd cool down by the time we got back so that I could talk to you. Temari sighed and massaged her temples. Yeah, I figured that out afterwards, but I don't really want to go through something like that again. She looked up and gave him a lopsided smile. I came to a realization last night on the Hokage monument that I've actually fallen in love with you. Naruto froze up in shock at the words. An old pain flared up within him before being doused by the words Temari had just spoken. Words he'd longed to hear his entire life but had worried he never would. He'd known that she cared and even liked him, and he'd been content with that given the arranged marriage thing, but for her to tell him that she loved him was simply amazing. It did lead into the problem of what to say. He certainly liked Temari, and she was his most precious person, but he didn't know if he loved her. He really didn't know how love felt, and he didn't want to lie. But she looked like she was expecting a response. What was he supposed to say? Temari smiled at her husband and reached across the table to hold his hand. Sure, I know what you're thinking, she said softly. I know that you deeply care about me, but I won't force you to say you love me until you know it for yourself. Getting up but still holding his hand, she moved around the table to sit across his lap. Leaning forward, she gave him a gentle kiss on the lips before running her free hand softly along the curve of his jaw. I think that I know you better than anyone now, she whispered with a grin. I can't wait for the day you can tell me that back. Naruto relaxed as he understood that she not only didn't expect him to parrot her words back but also that she understood why. He found himself smiling as an idea of how to repay her came to mind. Gently pushing her off his lap, causing a cute pout, he bowed over her hand. My sand princess, may I have the honor of this dance? Temari's eyes widened a bit in shock before she laughed happily as she understood his actions. While she liked dancing, Naruto hated it. He might not know how to respond fully to her confession, but the willingness to do something he disliked was telling on its own. Even with his recent growth, Naruto couldn't hold her past her expanded stomach, so he slipped in behind her and wrapped his arms under hers. Her relaxed posture combined with his new height allowed him to rest his chin on her shoulder as he slowly led her in a simple shuffle. The sensation of being held, combined with the slow movement, relaxed Temari until her husband began gently rubbing along the underside of her bust. What are you doing? She murmured. Naruto's hand froze, then continued the gentle massage. Nothing much, he said. I was just wondering if these stayed the same size after your pregnancy. Temari snorted and rolled her eyes. Way to kill the mood, Baka. I would hit you for that dumbass comment, but this feels good. Continue or we find out if your arm is edible. Naruto chuckled. Ma, so violent. You're lucky you're so beautiful. Temari pinched his arm in response to that comment. Beautiful? Ha, I'm a bloated monster right now, and it's all your fault. Next time, I'm having Tsunade-sama figuring out a way for you to carry the baby. Naruto froze for a moment at the mental image of himself with an extended stomach. Nah, I think I'll pass, he replied. You're still beautiful, though I will admit that the mood swings scare the hell out of me. Temari snickered. Can't help it, but that does remind me, I got a bit off track earlier. If I'm angry with you, you have to talk to me, or the reverse is true as well. I really don't want something like the past week happening again. Yeah, it really sucked. Naruto agreed. I promise I'll try, but you are one scary woman when you're angry, you know. Temari chuckled low in her throat. Well, someone has to keep you in line, she replied huskily as Naruto's hands continued their work. Are you planning something with this? She whispered. 'Cause I don't want you to start something that you aren't going to finish. Naruto traced a line of kisses along her neck. Well, I don't really have anything planned, how about you? Temari growled and grabbed his hand, pulling him towards the stairs. As a matter of fact, I do have something planned, she said, dragging her bemused husband along. You're gonna finish what you just started, husband. Naruto chuckled as Temari dragged him upstairs. Ah, the trials of marriage, he commented lightly. Oh, you're going to pay for that one, Naruto. An hour or so later, a happy Temari sat at the kitchen table sipping her tea as she watched Naruto rub some healing cream into his new wounds. Serves him right, she thought, her grin hidden by the cup. Ow, Naruto said dryly as he inspected damage. I'm considering registering those nails of yours as lethal weapons. Rubbing some of the cream into a bite, he gave Temari an annoyed look. Was it really necessary to bite that hard? Temari smirked at her husband. Yes, it was. I told you that you would pay for that last comment. Naruto pouted. I was just joking. Temari's smirk widened. Sometimes jokes come with a cost, husband. Doesn't mean you needed to claw and bite me half to death, he retorted lightly. Yes, I did, she said with a bright laugh. She eyed his shirtless body with a gleam in her eye and shifted her robe open to show him some cleavage. You know, I could always kiss it better, she said suggestively. Naruto stared at her and absently wiped a bit of drool away. As tempting as that is, he said with some regret, I suspect someone will come bug us sometime soon. When Temari raised an eyebrow in question, Naruto sighed. Name the last time we had a whole day to ourselves. Temari thought it over and was forced to admit he had a point. Someone always seemed to drop by. At second thought, she was surprised they hadn't been interrupted earlier. Before she could say anything about it, she heard the front door open and Naruto gave her an I told you so look. Kicking off her sandals at the door, Sakura wondered if she would still be welcome after the fight with Temari the night before. She'd said some mean things. She didn't really regret anything she'd said, but they were still mean. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her courage and headed into the house only to freeze and blush heavily when she found Naruto shirtless in the kitchen. Wow, she thought. Who knew he was hiding that under those jackets of his? Taking a closer look, she saw his back was heavily scratched up and he had what looked like bite marks as well. Holy hell, what did Temari do to him? Her blush deepened into bright crimson when she put Temari's smug expression together with Naruto's injuries. With his healing, those had to be extremely fresh, and she was suddenly glad she hadn't gotten home sooner. Sakura-chan. Hey Sakura-chan. Naruto snapped his fingers in front of Sakura's face, finally getting her attention. You okay? He asked when her eyes finally focused on his face. You seem a bit under the weather. Temari snickered in the background and Sakura stifled a groan. She'd almost pulled a Hinata on him, and clueless as he was, he'd reacted the same as he always did. Yeah, I'm alright. She managed to choke out. I just wasn't expecting to see you half undressed in the kitchen. Naruto blinked at her, then looked down. Oh, he said, a bit embarrassed. I sort of forgot to put on a shirt after I got done. He turned around quickly and caught the t-shirt Temari tossed to him, hurriedly pulling it on. Yeah, I had a bit of a run-in with a wildcat this morning. I got marked up, but I think I gave just as good as I got. Temari choked on her tea and Sakura felt her face flame up again at the innuendo in his statement. It boggled her mind that Naruto of all people was saying something like that. At least Temari was apparently just as shocked as she was. So, I'm surprised to see you coming home in the morning, Naruto said, ignoring the reactions from the women with practiced ease. I was halfway expecting to find you still asleep. Sakura shot a glance at Temari before responding. Well, last night I thought I'd hang out with Ino and it turned into a sleepover. Gotcha, he said with an easy grin. Hope you guys had fun. He looked around the kitchen and frowned. Now, if you ladies will excuse me, I need to find where I left my jacket. After Naruto wandered off, Sakura moved to the table and sat down across from Temari. She drummed her fingers on the table nervously as the older kunoichi eyed her carefully. After a minute or two of silence, Sakura sighed. "All right, I was out of line last night," she said quietly. "I'm sorry for what I said, but I was really annoyed at how you were treating Naruto." Temari considered her cup carefully as she mentally debated her response. "I suppose I accept your apology," she said finally. "There were issues that got out of hand, and as much as it pains me to admit it, the shock value of what you did opened my eyes to what was going on." She narrowed her gaze on the other girl. "That being said, I will tell you now that if you actually try what you threatened last night, they will never find your body." Sakura grimaced at the threat. She had no doubts that Temari was deadly serious, but she might relax some if Sakura explained what had driven her. "I understand," she said gravely. "There was more to it though, and I would like a chance to explain." Seeing Temari raise an eyebrow at her over her teacup, Sakura took that as permission to continue. "I'm not in love with Naruto," she said quietly. "I admit that I do have a little crush on him now, but that wasn't what drove me last night." Sakura looked up and met Temari's eyes squarely. "There once was a girl," she said whimsically. "This girl had a huge crush on the quiet, cool guy in her class, and she tried everything to get his attention. While she was trying to do that, there was a boy who was trying to get her attention, but she was mean to him because he annoyed her. The sad thing is that she built up her self-confidence with the knowledge that someone thought she was great, but was unwilling to give the boy the time of day. Eventually the girl ended up on a team with the cool boy she dreamed about and the boy who liked her. Lots of things happened, and the girl learned that the boy she thought she disliked was the only one that thought she was worth anything. He even risked his own life several times to save her, though she never thanked him for it." Temari eyed Sakura curiously. She wasn't sure where Sakura was going with her story. She knew it was the history of Team 7 obviously, but the why escaped her. "So, after the boy saved the girl from a horrible death, the girl started liking the boy a lot more. Then they found out that the boy was to marry a beautiful princess, and that he was in fact actually a prince himself. The girl took this hard. She'd begun to shift her attentions from the cool boy to the one that actually wanted her, but she knew there was nothing she could do. Then, the cool boy suddenly takes notice of the girl and offers marriage. The girl knew that it was in response to his rival being married, but even though the caring boy warned her, she accepted because she didn't want to let her childish crush go. The girl was treated horribly and could only watch in frustration as the princess became the object of the kind boy's affections. Every time he made her laugh or smile, it was a dagger in the girl's heart because she desperately wanted that for herself and wished her husband would show even a fraction of that warmth. Eventually the girl was cast off as trash and abandoned by her husband and even her parents. Still, the kind boy was looking out for her. Even though he was outside the village, his princess rescued the girl against her will because the boy would want her to. Sakura paused and poured herself some water. Taking a sip, she sighed and looked out the window as she continued her story. Eventually the boy came home and forced the girl back to the land of the living. Even when she'd given up on herself, he still believed in her, and that spark gave the girl hope. Sakura licked her lips nervously before continuing. The girl realized that she owed everything to the boy and that she would do everything she could to repay that debt. Then, the boy was having trouble with the princess, and the girl was furious that the princess was treating the boy badly. She decided that she was either going to get the princess to see reason or that she would take care of the boy herself, no matter the cost. The girl was delighted when the princess went to make up with the boy, but she was unsure of her own welcome after her dispute with the princess, so she left and went to a friend's to let things cool down. Temari calmly watched Sakura as she finished the story. Placing the cup down gently, she used her training to remain calm. "If I'm understanding the story right, you're saying that you've more or less made yourself my husband's slave. Am I correct in this assumption?" Sakura fidgeted and focused her eyes on her hands. "Not how I'd like to describe it, but that's about right," she admitted quietly. Temari rubbed the bridge of her nose to quell her growing headache. "You do realize that he would be absolutely pissed if you told him that," she hissed. "It doesn't exactly fill me with joy either. He had that damn crush on you for so long, and now you're stating that you would do whatever he wanted. Do you realize how screwed up that is? For that matter, if you feel like that, why the hell didn't you accept his offer to join the clan?" Sakura shrugged uncomfortably but looked up from her hands to meet Temari's eyes. "It was too soon," she said quietly. "Naruto had just dragged me out of my own personal hell, and then he just offered. It was just so fast, I couldn't really process it at the time. It didn't take me long to decide, but I've been afraid to bring it up because I have this fear that if I do, he'll rescind the offer or that you wouldn't accept me. Temari groaned and ran both hands down her face in frustration. Tell me, she said softly. Why do you want to accept the offer, and I don't mean your little story from before. Tell me, why do you want to be in Uzumaki? I want a home, Sakura said quietly, meeting Temari's gaze evenly. I want a place where I will be accepted and welcomed and not tossed out like I was garbage. I know that I'm not one of your favorite people, but even so, you're at least civil and treat me like I'm a person. As for Naruto, well, you know how he is. I can't say that I'm comfortable with all of this, Temari admitted. I have some serious issues with you deciding that you need to serve my husband, but I don't think I have the heart to deny you a home. If I did, I'd be just like those bastards that ignored or belittled both my brother and my husband, and I don't want to be anything like them. Sakura gave Temari a tepid smile. I suspect it will be uncomfortable for both of us. As for last night, I know that he is yours, she said. I will not make advances towards him, but if he decides that he wants me, I won't stop him either. Why the hell should I accept that? Temari snarled. How hard is it to understand that he is mine? Sakura held her hand up in a warning gesture and waited for Temari to calm down some. First, I know that he is yours. I honestly don't expect him to make a move on me, but I felt that it was best to be upfront, especially after the conversation from last night. The second reason is something Tsunade-sama brought up with me. Seeing that she now had Temari's undivided attention, Sakura continued. Tsunade-sama told me that Naruto was going to have to train to use the Kyuubi's power sometime in the near future. When he does, Tsunade-sama believes that he may become more driven by his instincts under its influence. And the reason that I couldn't take care of this myself? Temari asked in confusion. Tsunade-sama believes that if Naruto, mates with a woman while influenced by the Kyuubi's chakra, that there is a chance it will sterilize the woman in question. Sakura crossed her arms protectively and refused to meet Temari's eyes. Temari's eyes widened in shock and she just stared at Sakura for a moment. You can't be serious. She finally managed to sputter out. Why the hell would she tell you that and not me? Sakura sighed in resignation. It's a bit more complicated than that, but I was only asked about this after you guys left on the trip to Suna. Tsunade-sama said that no one really knows what will happen when Naruto starts training with the Kyuubi's chakra. Konoha has never trained the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, and Naruto's seal was powered by the damn Shinigami. Add in Naruto's general unpredictability, and no one knows what to expect. Taking a sip of her tea as she marshaled her thoughts, Temari felt a great deal of irritation, though not really directed at the pink one. Shoving thoughts of strangling a certain twin-tailed blonde to the back of her mind, she focused her attention back onto the conversation. Alright, what I don't get is why Tsunade-sama thinks Naruto of all people would turn all lusty. Kakashi and Jiraiya. Sakura coughed. Point, Temari said, rolling her eyes. Still, what makes the Hokage think that the Kyuubi's chakra would affect him like that? It doesn't really make much sense, and I sure as hell never got that sort of reaction from my brother. Sakura tapped her finger on the table as she dredged up the entire conversation with Tsunade. Well, she said something about the Inuzuka clan sometimes having issues with the bonds between the human and canine members of the clan. Apparently, if the personalities merge too much, the human member becomes more aggressive in all manners. Okay, Temari replied slowly. So, Tsunade-sama believes that might happen to Naruto, and if it does, it might sterilize any kunoichi he mates with. If true, it sounds like it would be better for him to train without a kunoichi nearby. Ano, Sakura said nervously. I get the feeling that she would prefer that he did become lustful as opposed to destructive, and it's worse than I might have implied. It gets worse? Well, the Kyuubi's chakra is incredibly dangerous and corrosive, Sakura answered. There is a good chance that if he mates with a kunoichi while using what Tsunade-sama called the chakra shroud, it will kill the kunoichi. Well, that certainly doesn't sound like a good plan, Temari replied dryly. You still volunteered for this, though? Sakura shrugged dismissively. Well, I'm hoping that it's not necessary, but better me than someone more valuable like you, right? Sakura pulled out the scroll she'd received on Uzumaki adoption practices and waved it at Temari. Besides, I've got a plan. Temari massaged her temples wearily. Damn it, Pinky, even if I don't really like you much, viewing yourself as expendable is a bit much. Temari paused and gazed at Sakura speculatively. I suppose as matriarch, I should be approving of your willingness to sacrifice yourself for my husband, but I think we both know that he would not like that at all. She rubbed her stomach protectively. I suppose that you also have a point that I can't risk myself, so tell me this plan of yours. Sakura unrolled the scroll to a marked spot and handed it over. She noticed Temari's face paling as she read and braced herself for the upcoming fireworks. Temari slowly rolled up the scroll and bounced it on her hand a few times as she considered the girl sitting across the table. Your plan is dangerous as hell, she remarked mildly. Still, it probably does provide you with your best chance of survival should the worst happen. Assuming, of course, that you survive this first part. Sakura blinked. She'd been expecting a far more volatile response. Wait, you approve? She blurted out. I mean I was expecting you to be angry or something. She backtracked hastily. Temari snickered at the flustered girl. Well, it's not the dumbest idea I've ever seen, mostly because I live with, my husband. Still, are you sure? This is dangerous as hell, and if it works, there is no going back. Sakura met Temari's gaze evenly. I have faith in my teammate, and Tsunade-sama is the best Mednin that ever lived. I choose to believe that with both involved, this will work. I suppose you're right. Temari mused. It will take Naruto a bit to study up on the required seals, so this won't be happening anytime soon. You have until then to back out, and I won't hold it against you. Sakura smiled serenely at Temari. I won't, she said firmly. This is far from what I pictured when I was younger, but this is my choice, and I won't change my mind. A silence settled on the girls as Temari continued to sip her tea and nibble on some of the snacks Naruto had left for her. Sakura busied herself making a lunch for herself before sitting across from Temari with a cup of coffee. Hey Temari, Sakura said, breaking the silence. I thought he just went to find his jacket. It shouldn't take this long, right? Temari rolled her eyes in exasperation. He probably got distracted by something shiny, she said with a smirk. Don't look at me like that, it happens. We'll be walking along and he'll get this goofy grin and then weird stuff happens. He's like a magnet for the bizarre. Sakura laughed as she remembered some of the things that happened to Team 7. Yeah, I know what you mean. We had a D-rank once, walking the Inuzuka dogs, and somehow Naruto ended up in a minefield. Kakashi-sensei even said, only you Naruto, when it happened. Bouncing into the kitchen, Naruto was surprised to find the two laughing but shrugged it off and clapped his hands together excitedly. So, who's up for some training? He cheered. Sakura got up from her place at the table and apologized. Sorry Naruto, I have a training class at the hospital in about half an hour. Maybe tomorrow? Naruto nodded at that. Sure thing Sakura-chan. I've heard really good things from Bachan about your abilities with the medical stuff. I always knew you'd find something you'd be great at, he said with a proud smile. Sakura blushed at the praise and hurriedly finished cleaning up after her lunch. Thanks Naruto, she said. Well, I'm off, you two have fun. Watching her leave, the smile dropped from Naruto's face and he sat down across from Temari. So? He said. Temari gave him a slight smile. How much did you hear? She asked. Pretty much all of it, he admitted. I figured I'd stay out of it though. Temari pursed her lips and thought. Probably a good choice all things considered. I doubt she would have been as honest if you were here. Still, did you know anything about the whole bloodlust thing? Naruto shook his head. Nah, probably just didn't get a chance. It's not like an S-rank shinobi kicked my ass first night back in the village. Oh wait, that did happen. He paused and adopted a more serious tone. I suspect that she probably would have told you eventually, but not me. Especially since she seems to be just covering for possibilities. The few times I've used Fuzzbud's chakra, I don't remember feeling particularly aroused. Filled with a desire to destroy everything, yes. Turned on, not so much. Temari shrugged in response. I admit it seems unlikely. Still doesn't hurt to be careful, even if the thought of you and Pinky together makes me want to stab both of you. I suppose you know what she wants you to do, right? Naruto nodded glumly. Yeah, the only reason I can use the Kyuubi's chakra without frying is that it also boosts my healing ability into something like regeneration. I've already got about a dozen clones studying the required seals for the adoption ritual. Temari considered that carefully. I wonder if they can be used to transfer other bloodlines as well, something like the Byakugan or Sharingan. I doubt it, Naruto said with a shake of his head. The seals are designed to change the DNA of the recipient to carry the healing ability of the Uzumaki clan. As far as I can tell from the scrolls, the only reason it works is because when done correctly, the transferred healing ability repairs the damage done. So what about transferring another bloodline to someone already carrying the healing ability? Temari asked curiously. Naruto shuddered. Well, I'm sure as hell not going to try it on myself or any of our family. He paused and eyed Temari curiously. I suppose that includes Sakura-chan now then? Temari snorted. I suppose, she said reluctantly. It beats having her try to convince me to take her as a sister wife, I guess. I don't think she wants that, Temari-chan, Naruto said reprovingly. I'm not happy that she seems to have based her life around being useful to me, but it beats her being strapped to a bed and suicidal, I guess. Still, I'm positive that she said she didn't want that. Temari closed her eyes and sighed. Baka. After pestering Temari in vain for why she'd called him an idiot, he dragged her outside to train. Ignoring her protests about being pregnant, he pointed out that she didn't have to do anything strenuous, but fresh air and exercise were recommended for pregnant women. Realizing that he was both right and not going to drop the subject, she found herself slowly working through a taijutsu form Naruto showed her. There you go, Temari-chan. He cheered when she worked at an easy pace. I know you're a long-range fighter, but you can't ignore being able to hand someone their ass with just your hands. Temari was willing to admit he had a point, but it was the reason her fan was backed with chakra-reinforced metal. Why hit someone with your fists when you could hit them with something much harder? Still, even burdened as she was, it was relaxing to get her body moving, though she tired out quickly and sat down to watch Naruto spar with his clones on the pond. It was somewhat odd to watch. She'd gotten used to him flowing gracefully through his forms, but today he was blurring into motion and losing his balance. Naruto, what are you doing? She asked after the third time he splashed face first into the pond. Leaving some clones to practice, he made his way over to her chair. Well, I learned something fighting Itachi last night, he admitted. I've always tried to hit as hard as I can, but I can add power to my strikes by increasing my speed. If I can get fast enough, I can hit someone without relying on tricks so much. Oh, that makes sense, I suppose, Temari said after giving it some thought. I'm not sure why you're having so much trouble, though. You know the forms, how hard is it to speed them up? Meh, it's mostly muscle memory, Naruto replied. It's hard to adjust when you just try to speed it up. Throws off all my reactions. He paused and rubbed the back of his head. I'm considering trying to use chakra to enhance it, but I'm not sure how to do it without hurting myself. Temari stared at him blankly and resisted the urge to go hunt down Kakashi and force his precious book up his ass. Naruto, one of the basic skills you should have learned after the academy was how to reinforce your body with chakra to move faster and strike harder. How the hell do you think I can swing my fan so easily? Oh, Naruto said, his expression dropping. I didn't know that. I really didn't learn much other than tree climbing from Kakashi-sensei. He mostly tried to get us to work together as a team cause we sort of sucked at it. He looked at her hopefully. Help me? Please? Temari sighed and put her book down. All right, I'll help you out, but I don't want you to try anything I don't show you until you discuss it with me. Don't look at me like that, you have a tendency to overdo things and you know it. Now, the first thing you do is send a small, carefully controlled amount of chakra to your index finger. Now move your finger and get a feel for how the chakra enhances the movement. She cut off at the sounds of the bones in Naruto's finger breaking. Healing the finger, she tried not to sigh again. With Naruto's massive chakra reserves, this was going to take a while, even with clones, and speaking of those. Alright, how about we try using a clone so I don't have to keep healing you? Once the required clone was in place, she continued the lesson. Alright, let's try this again. It was early afternoon before Naruto managed more than just moving his hand without breaking it, but Temari was pleased with the progress. Naruto's usual training with the gravity seal had greatly strengthened him, add in chakra enhancement, and he was going to be a nightmare to fight for just about anyone. Alright, that's enough for now, she told him firmly. It looks like we have a visitor, so take a break at least. Naruto nodded and bounded over to Metasuma as the Jonin leisurely made his way onto the training field. Afternoon, Asuma-sensei, he called cheerfully. Oh, hey Naruto, Temari. Asuma drawled around his usual cigarette. Glad I caught you up and about. Figured I'd come talk to Temari about that little wind jutsu she used on me in Suna. Temari fought down a blush and hung her head. Ah, yeah, sorry about that, she said. I was upset, but I shouldn't have done that. You have my deepest apologies, Asuma-san, for my actions that day. Asuma lazily waved the apology off. It was poor field discipline, but I'm not concerned about it. The circumstances aren't likely to happen again. What I'm interested in is how you did it. There are very few wind users here in Konoha and I'm always looking to add to my repertoire. Temari smiled gratefully at the lazy jonin. Ah, I see. Well, it's not really a jutsu as such, just something I picked up to deal with people who close in on me. Naruto, lend me a clone for this. Once the clone was in position, Temari looked to make sure Asuma was watching. So, what I came up with was sending a burst of wind chakra aimed at the ground using the person's chakra as a guide. Essentially, it surrounds the target's chakra and creates a huge gust of wind that blows them off their feet. If you have a hold and can throw them when it does, well, this is what happens. Grabbing the Naruto clone's arm, Temari proceeded to launch it a good 20 feet into the air. So, normally, this is when I would use my fan to shred the target, Temari said with a smirk. Asuma watched intently and made to flick his cigarette until a low growl from Naruto made him reconsider. Field stripping it, he tucked the butt into a pocket which made Naruto stop the intimidating growl. That's pretty useful, he commented lightly. Still, if they're that close, why not just hit them directly with the wind chakra? Temari scowled in frustration. I'm good at creating large amounts of wind and even sharpening it, but I don't want to do that if someone is that close. I prefer not to be shredded myself. Asuma pulled out one of his trench knives and channeled a wind blade around it. Takes practice, he admitted. Still, it's really useful for up close and personal. Naruto stared at the wind blade in awe. That is so awesome, he cheered. Can you teach me how to do that? Asuma shrugged. Gotta have a wind affinity to do it. I'm kinda bummed I can't pass it on to my students because none of them do. Cool. So, how do you find out your affinities? Asuma stared at Naruto for a moment, and shot a glance over at Temari when he heard her teeth grinding together. Taking a step away from the fuming pregnant hellbeast, he turned back to Naruto. Well, ideally your Jonin-sensei should have tested you before entering you in the Chunin exam. I'm guessing that didn't happen? No. Naruto pouted. Kakashi-sensei is a kick-ass ninja, but he really kinda sucked as a teacher. I've only really started getting anything like help from him now that I'm a Chunin. Asuma sighed and pulled out another cigarette as he mused Kakashi's apparent inability to follow the guidelines for teaching genin. It didn't exactly come as a such, but it was still disappointing. Well, the way we test for it here in Konoha is by using chakra paper. They're pretty pricey, so people don't usually carry any one them, or I would test you. Naruto's eyes widened and he gave Asuma a wide grin and created a clone that ran off into the house while he did a little victory dance. Seeing the mystified looks he was getting from Asuma and Temari, he stopped and rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Sorry, just excited, he said. I'd been wondering what this box of blank paper in the study was for, and now I think I know. As he finished up explaining, the clone came back and handed him a small wooden box before dispelling. Are these the right papers? He asked Asuma as he showed the man the contents of the box. Asuma chuckled at the sight of almost an entire year's salary worth of chakra paper. Yeah, those are what we need. Where did you get all of this anyway? Naruto pulled out a piece of chakra paper and closed the box before handing to Temari. I don't know, he admitted. I found it in storage with my dad's things when I got the house. I'd been wondering why a bunch of paper was in a sealed box, and now I know. Asuma briefly wondered what the yandere was using the paper for, but mentally shrugged it off and focused back on Naruto. Alright, now hold the paper in your hand and channel some chakra into it. Temari interjected before Naruto could. And by some chakra, he means a very small amount, Naruto. I'm not sure what happens if you overload chakra paper, and I would prefer not to find out. Naruto nodded at that and focused on channel as little chakra as possible into the slip of paper. He thought something was wrong when it tore itself apart, the edges smoking, but looking up, he noted the surprise on Asuma and Temari's faces. Did I screw it up? He asked apprehensively. Asuma shook his head. Nope, it did what it was supposed to. The way it tore in half shows that you have a very strong wind affinity, and the smoldering shows a weak fire one. I'm a bit surprised though. I don't think I've ever heard of a genin having a secondary affinity unless it was a keki genkai. Most jonin has a secondary, but it only forms after working with a second element quite a bit, and I don't think I've ever heard of you using much fire. I don't, Naruto admitted. I know one fire jutsu and I've only used it a few times outside of practicing with it. Odd, Asuma commented. Well, I can show you what to do to start training your wind affinity, and I'm sure Temari here can help you out as well. Picking up a leaf, he held it in the palm of his hand and shredded it with a pulse of chakra. The first exercise is to cut a leaf in half with just wind chakra. When forming the chakra, imagine that it is sharp and getting sharper as you grind it against itself. Naruto picked up a leaf and focused on it, making a tiny nick as he visualized Asuma's words. Okay, I think I get it, he said. I want to make it like I'm cutting the leaf from both sides, maybe like a pair of scissors? I always thought of it more as my knives cutting against each other, but I suppose scissors works, Asuma said. It's just important that you make it sharper. Naruto nodded and created a great many clones that all gathered leaves and began practicing. Seeing this, Asuma mentally grumbled about not getting Naruto assigned to his team after the academy. Wind Affinity and Mass Shadow clones? Oh, the things he could have done with the kid, and instead Kakashi got him. He mentally sighed. Sometimes life just wasn't fair. Well, I'm out of time for today, Asuma said, glancing at his watch. I'll drop by in a couple of days and see how you're doing. Waving a goodbye, Asuma wandered towards the complex entrance, bypassing an annoyed-looking Ino on his way out. He gave the girl a wave and quickened his steps. No way in hell was he going to deal with the blonde when she looked like that. Delegating the leaf exercise to his clones, Naruto sat behind Temari and massaged her shoulders. She'd complained about her back hurting, and since he was the one to drag her out to train, easing the pain seemed like the thing to do. Spotting Ino headed for them, Naruto cursed. Oh hell, she looks unhappy, Temari-chan. Temari opened her eyes and looked. Why, yes, she does. What did you do? Because I don't think I did anything to piss her off. Sure, let's go with that, Naruto replied. I know she was pissed over the whole Suna thing, but I wasn't sure if she was pissed at me or at you. You, Temari said dryly. I always assume unless otherwise proven that it was you. Meh, so mean to me. All that biting and clawing, now this. Are you sure you aren't really a cat? Temari narrowed her eyes and held her nails up where Naruto could see them clearly. I don't know, she said sweetly. If I was, that would make you my scratching post, right? Naruto gulped. Hee, just kidding. Besides, other than Tora, I like cats. Temari reached back and patted his head. What do you know? She replied smugly. I'll have you housebroken in no time. Hey. Naruto pouted. I'm not an animal. I don't need housebroken. Temari chuckled evilly. Well, dear husband, it is the job of every wife to train their husband in the rules of the house. It's not just you. Well, that sucks. Naruto grumbled. I bet the team doesn't have to deal with that. No. Temari agreed. Mostly 'cause he's an asshat. Naruto snickered. True enough. At that point, Ino arrived and planted herself in front of Naruto and Temari with a scowl on her face and her hands on her hips. Hey Ino-chan, Naruto said cheerfully, what brings you by today? I have a bet going with Temari-chan that it's probably something troublesome. Temari chuckled at the Shikamaru reference even as Ino rolled her eyes. Shopping, Ino said forcefully. Sorry, what? Naruto asked, confused. I was promised a shopping trip with both of you before we left for Suna, Ino declared. I'm here to collect. Ah crap, Naruto muttered Sato voice to Temari. Temari for her part grabbed his arm painfully to disable his escape. You're not running away, she whispered back. If I have to deal with this, so do you. I don't suppose that I could convince Itachi to come back and put me back into a coma, Naruto replied. It might be less traumatic for me, he only killed me a couple 100 times. This might just burn my soul. Oh, quit being such a baby and go clean up. If you're not back in 10 minutes, we don't stop at Ichiraku afterwards. Naruto winced and hurried inside. She'd learned some truly horrible threats since she'd begun living with him. Still, he suddenly had a very sympathetic understanding of Shikamaru's viewpoint on women. They were indeed very troublesome. Chapter 26. Meaningful Conversations. Temari sat at the tea shop nibbling on some rice crackers and savoring the feeling of being off her feet. She liked shopping. There was a certain thrill to find a good bargain, but Ino took things a bit overboard. Well, less overboard and more over the top really. After the third shop Ino dragged them through, Temari had begged off, citing tired legs, and left her husband to the mercy of the shopaholic. Temari watched with a faint grin as Ino dragged a complaining Naruto into yet another clothes store by the ear. It was a ruthless and mercenary move, but better him than her. Besides, her feet and back hurt, and that was technically Naruto's fault. Her eyes narrowed as she watched the reactions of the people in the marketplace to her husband's presence. While a great deal of the younger civilians seemed not to have a problem, there was still a great deal of dislike and outright hatred from some of the older generations. It hadn't kept some of them from approaching her with marriage offers for their daughters. Apparently being linked to the yondaime through marriage trumped their hatred for his son. Adding to the oddity of things were those that hated her for being from Suna and for marrying the son of the yondaime. She really didn't understand how Naruto hadn't succumbed to despair when he was younger. It was hard enough to deal with as an adult. "Ano, may I sit with you?" Temari heard. Looking up, she noted Hinata standing nervously next to the chair across from her. She mentally sighed. She had a feeling she knew what this was about, and she really didn't want to deal with it. Still, Hinata was a very pleasant girl and was also the heiress of a powerful clan. Being rude and telling her no just wasn't in the cards. "Sure," she said with a nod. "I'm just taking a break from shopping, but you are welcome to join me if you wish." Hinata sat with a small frown. From her earlier dealing with the woman, Temari was usually very blunt. If she was being polite, it wasn't a very good sign. She fidgeted a bit, not wanting to press Temari, but she'd already taken the seat, and it would be rude to just leave. Perhaps a neutral subject would break the ice? "Ano, it's very nice weather we're having, Temari-san," she said quietly. Temari snorted, then began to chuckle. "That it is, Hinata-san, that it is. I would prefer if you called me just Temari. I'm not really into being all formal. Besides, you've been a guest in my home. I'd like to think we're friends." "Oh, well, please call me Hinata then," Hinata said shyly. "I didn't want to assume." A more relaxed silence settled over the two for a few moments. "Ano, Temari. Did you and Naruto-kun make up? Both of you seem far more cheerful today." Temari gave Hinata a knowing smile that made Hinata blush. "Yeah," she said with a smirk. "You could say we made up all right." That's good." Hinata stammered at the implications. "I was really worried when you got back from Suna and weren't talking. Naruto-kun seemed really down. That was mostly my fault." Temari sighed. "Things happened and I didn't take it well. I suppose I don't really blame him for not wanting to talk to me, but at least it's in the past, and I think both of us learned from it." Hinata sat back and digested that, then began poking her fingers together and refusing to meet Temari's eye. "Ano, Temari," she managed to force out. "I heard that the Uzumaki clan had tradition of multiple marriages. Do you think that at some point you might consider others?" Temari closed her eyes and mentally collected a bet from herself. "It is true that the Uzumaki clan has had that tradition," she hedged. "At this time, we are not interested in reviving that tradition though." Hinata continued, refusing to meet Temari's eyes. "Ano, is there any chance that you might change your mind?" Temari reached across the table and gently tilted Hinata's face up with a finger under her chin. "I won't say that I would never consider it," she said, looking Hinata directly in the eyes. "There may be a chance at some point that it would prove advantageous, but at present, I am not willing to share." "Oh, I see," Hinata said, downcast. "I know you like him," Temari said gently. "Still, from what I know of the politics here in Konoha, you would never be able to have him even if he hadn't been made to marry me." Hinata pushed Temari's hand away softly and looked at the table sadly. "I know that," she said sadly. "Still, a girl can dream, can't she? I've watched him for a long time and he gave me hope for the future. When he cheered me on at the Chunin exams against Niji, it was like a dream come true. The boy I like noticed me, and if that could happen, maybe other things could as well." Temari grabbed Hinata's hand and held it. "I think you've got something wrong," she said. "Naruto has many admirable qualities that most are just beginning to see, but he can't give you anything you didn't already have." She paused to find the right words. "He can be inspiring, and following his example can help you call out qualities you didn't know you had, but in the end, it's not him, it's you." Hinata shifted uncomfortably but took comfort from the hand Temari was holding. "It really wasn't fair," she said sadly. "You swooped in out of nowhere and claimed the boy I liked, and to make it worse, he's happy. I'd really hoped that somehow it would work out." Temari smiled sadly at Hinata. "I'm sorry, but that road is closed to you now. Still, it's not the end. I don't have a problem with you being friends with him." Hinata looked up at Temari with hope in her eyes. "Really? Even knowing that I love him, you would let me still be his friend?" Temari rolled her eyes in irritation. "Yes, really. If I stopped girls from being his friend just because they like him, I think that would leave him with just Tenten as a friend." When Hinata's eyes shifted to where Naruto was still being dragged by Ino, Temari snorted. "Yes, I am aware of it. I haven't talked to her about it because she hasn't overstepped her bounds and my husband is as usual totally clueless to how she feels. Temari shrugged and gave Hinata a sly smile. Besides, sometimes it's fun to sick her on him, it's good for him. Hinata smiled back timidly. Sometimes Temari scared her a bit. Ano, what about Sakura-san? Temari scowled at her crackers. That is a completely different issue, unfortunately. Dealing with her is sort of like sticking my hand into a scorpion's nest. In the near future, it seems she will be joining the Uzumaki clan though. Hinata's eyes bulged out in shock. You're letting her marry him? She blurted. Temari shot Hinata a confused look and replayed the conversation in her head. Oh no, she said firmly. No, Pinky is not marrying us, she'll just be adopted into the clan. Hinata breathed a sigh of relief and sank back in her chair limply. I'm not sure I could handle if she did, she admitted. You scared me there. You and me both, Temari muttered under her breath. Looking over at the shops, she saw distinctive black hair headed for Naruto. Oh, this might be trouble, she told Hinata. Hinata looked up and saw Sasuke headed for Naruto and frowned. Should we do something? Temari scowled out at the Uchiha. No, sometimes it's necessary to stay out of the boys' way. I just hope they don't try to kill each other again. Mark, it's a bit crowed for Sasuke to have his guts splattered on the ground. Well said, San bitch, a voice called before the speaker dropped into an open chair at the table. Though I suspect it would be your husband that ended up dead and not my fiancé. Looking up into Kuratsuchi's distinctive pupilless pink eyes, Temari scowled. I doubt it, Rockor, she retorted. Last time they fought, yours was crippled and mine is far stronger now than he was then. Now, did you need something or was there another reason for your presence? Kuratsuchi scoffed. No, I saw you and little Miss Timid here and thought that us girls should chat while the boys do. Or is my presence uncomfortable for you, sand slut? Temari gritted her teeth in rage and clenched her hands under the table to hide it from Kuratsuchi. Not at all, earthworm, she said with a sweet smile. Hinata-chan and I were just discussing how likely it was that Naruto could repeat what his father did against IWA. It was my husband and my brother that killed your most powerful Jinchuriki when he was stupid enough to attack. Personally, I think it's pretty high odds he can do it. All that rock in their heads means IWA shinobi don't tend to learn well. If he lives, that long-winded whore. Kuratsuchi snarled, standing from her chair in rage. All I wanted was a pleasant conversation, but since I obviously won't find it here, I'm leaving. Putting action to her words, she stormed stiff-backed from the tea shop with Temari's gaze arrowing into her spine. Once she was gone, Hinata breathed a sigh of relief but noted Temari still looked pissed as hell. Ano, that could have gone better, I think. Temari didn't respond for a moment, obviously trying to bleed off some of her anger. Taking a deep calming breath, she turned back to Hinata. If she wanted a civil conversation, she pointed out mildly, she wouldn't have started it with an insult. No, she was trying to provoke me, but the question is, why? Suna and IWA have a long-standing hatred of each other, but I'm a Konoha kunoichi now. That felt personal for some reason. Hinata considered it for a moment. Jealousy, maybe? She offered. I know that IWA initially offered her to Naruto-kun, but you refused outright in the council. Maybe. Temari conceded. Still, that fell off. I think it would be best to remain cautious of her. I don't just mean for me, I mean for all of our friends as well, okay? Hinata said before being interrupted by a fuming Ino plopping down in the chair recently vacated by Kuratsuchi. That sucks. Ino complained loudly. Sasuke showed up and Naruto ditched on me, leaving a clone behind. Temari raised her eyebrow at that. Any idea where they went? Ino pouted. No, they just took off. Naruto tried to be sneaky about it. He left a clone behind, but I knew it wasn't him, so I popped it. Temari snorted. You could have made a mistake, she pointed out. When we got back from Suna, I thought he was a clone and I ended up breaking his nose. Ino chuckled at that. Yeah, the look on your face was pretty good, but I knew it was a clone. For some reason, I can tell him apart from his clones. How? Temari asked, baffled. Ino shrugged. I don't know, I can just tell, I guess. Ano, Ino-san. Hinata spoke up. If you close your eyes and focus on that, could you point out what direction he is in? Ino looked at Hinata curiously, then shot a glance at Temari, who just shrugged. Deciding to humor the other girl, Ino closed her eyes and concentrated. Now that she was actually thinking about it, She could detect something odd and she raised her hand to point in the direction without opening her eyes. It's really odd, but I think I feel something that way. Temari and Hinata followed the direction of Ino's finger and saw it was pointed in the general direction of the Namikaze estate. Trading glances, they looked back at Ino as the blonde finally opened her eyes. "Hi," she said cautiously. "Why are you two looking at me like that?" Temari sighed and plopped her chin down on her hand as she continued to observe Ino. "I think there was another component to when you got stuck in his head," she said tiredly. "You pointed directly back to our home, with your eyes closed." "Well, that's kinda disturbing," Ino said quietly after she digested the information. "Still, at least I'm not still spouting off Naruto's verbal tick anymore. That was embarrassing." "I don't know," Temari said with a sly grin. "It was sort of cute, and I bet if we get you excited enough, you'll say it again, right, Hinata?" Hinata regarded the second girl who had formed some sort of bond with Naruto that she couldn't have before mirroring Temari's smile. "I think it would be fun, Temari," she said cheerfully. Ino looked at both of them in horror. "Oh, you two just suck," she said, sliding away from them in her chair. "If you do, I won't forgive you, Databoyo." Clapping both hands over her mouth at the unintended slip, Ino pouted. "Really, you guys suck." Kuratsuchi fumed as she stalked her way back to the Uchiha district, her obvious bad mood causing people to scatter out of her way. She hadn't intended to start a fight with the sand bitch, but a lifetime's disdain for Suna and Konoha Nin was hard to overcome. She clenched her fists and mentally raged at how fucked up her mission was. Befriend the Namikaze heir, if possible seduce him. Failing that, eliminate him. It had seemed simple at the time, but no one in IWA had known the damned Suna whore would already be knocked up and would also have a close relationship with her husband. She snorted in irritation. If someone had told her a representative of a village that had just attacked would fit in almost seamlessly, she wouldn't have believed it. It didn't change the fact that it had actually happened, though. Every path to her mission ran through Temari, and that was an unpleasant prospect. While she didn't seem to regulate who he could be friends with, there wasn't a chance in hell Temari would allow her to be one. Seducing him was a joke. Even casual listening around town had told her the boy was devoted to his wife. Being a Jinchuriki, drugging him as a seduction tactic was out as well. As for assassinating him, Kuratsuchi didn't think her grandfather had really thought that one out. First, she'd have to get an instantly lethal hit or face a pissed-off Jinchuriki. Then, even if she did do that, she'd have to deal with Temari, and while she was confident that she could, even or maybe especially pregnant, Temari would go down fighting. Escaping alive under those circumstances seemed unlikely. Additionally, from what she could tell, doing so would essentially be a declaration of war against both Suna and Konoha. A revenge-driven war with both Suna and Konoha would not end well for IWA. Frankly, she was about ready to give up on this mission, though the thought of trying to explain her failure to her grandfather was unpleasant in the extreme. Perhaps she would have an opening after Temari delivered the Namikaze heirs. Even if she didn't, perhaps acquiring one of those would appease her grandfather. It was worth at least laying out some plans. Naruto leads Sasuke into his study and accepted a folder from a clone already present. Moving behind his desk and activating the privacy seals, he reviewed the clone's memories as he waved Sasuke to sit down. "Dope," Sasuke growled. "I followed you because you said that we shouldn't talk about that man in public, but you aren't saying anything. Speak or I am leaving." Naruto tapped the folder on the desk and regarded Sasuke carefully. "Well, I'm not sure how to do this," he admitted. "You have a tendency to fly off the handle when Itachi is mentioned, and I do have information you want. Still, perhaps a little background would help." "Dope. Chill, team. I promise that this is important, and you know how seriously I take my promises." Naruto paused and got a grudging nod from Sasuke. "Alright, so what do you remember about your clan's relations in the village when you were growing up?" Sasuke momentarily looked bewildered but quickly replaced it with a scowl. "I don't see how this matters, but since you promised." "I don't really know," he admitted. "I know we were the strongest clan and that we ran the police force, but I didn't really pay attention. I was only a child." I see," Naruto replied quietly. "I don't have the full story, but after the Kyuubi attack, there was a great deal of suspicion regarding the Uchiha." Sasuke snorted in disbelief. "Oh please, why would they suspect us?" Naruto opened the folder and handed over the first packet. Eyewitnesses claimed the Kyuubi was acting odd, as if controlled. There was only one man that ever controlled the Kyuubi that we know of, and he was an Uchiha. Madara Uchiha to be exact. Once again, I don't know what happened, but it was after the Kyuubi attack that the Uchiha walled their compound. I remember seeing the walls go up when we were maybe 4 or so. That's right, Sasuke said in a puzzled tone. I asked my father about them and he said that they were for the clan's protection. So what does this have to do with anything? Well, as I said, I don't have proof, Naruto said. But I'm sure that Itachi didn't go crazy and kill your clan on a whim. Handing over the second packet from the folder, Naruto pointed at it. According to this, there were 2 attackers that night and Itachi only killed active duty shinobi and kunoichi. The rest were the work of that second attacker. What's even more disturbing is that most of the shinobi and kunoichi were missing their eyes. Still, disturbing as that is, it does give me an idea of who was behind it. The stress of having his world's foundation shaken involuntarily activated Sasuke's Sharingan as he read, permanently burning it into his memory. Looking up at Naruto with murder in his eyes, he managed a semi-human growl of hatred. Who? Pulling out his father's journal, he flipped through it until he found the notes his father had made about Root. Handing it over, he glared at Sasuke. You will treat this book with the utmost respect, Sasuke, or I will tear that crippled arm off and feed it to you. Is that perfectly clear? Sasuke gulped at the malicious intent behind the words and just nodded. The question of why Naruto had threatened him became clear once he understood that this was his father's journal. He would probably have the same reaction to anyone handling his clan's scrolls. Still, it irked him greatly that Naruto could make a threat like that and also make it stick. As he continued to read with a sinking feeling in his stomach, Naruto began to talk. So, we have an extremely militant elder, one willing to take things into his own hands, and he has his own little corps of ninja. I remember Sandaimjiji very well, and exterminating a clan isn't something he would do. That leaves Danzo and maybe the other 2 elders, but probably just him. Sasuke snarled and handed the journal back to Naruto. They will pay, he growled, slapping a hand against his neck where his curse seal began to burn in time to his fury. Naruto sighed. Sasuke, are you that stupid? Do you want to be a slave? Sasuke blinked at the odd response and his anger cleared slightly, relieving the pressure from the seal. What? He asked, confused. I've talked with Ero-sennin about that seal, Naruto said, pointing at Sasuke's neck. According to him, that thing leeches off you and draws power from violent emotions from its host. When activated, it begins to subvert the will of the host and make them obedient to the one that applied it, in this case, Hebe Team. So I ask again, do you want to be a slave? Sasuke scowled at Naruto in irritation. No, of course I don't want to be a slave, but I do want vengeance. Besides, what does that have to do with why we're here anyway? Naruto nodded at that and proceeded to give Sasuke the unfiltered version of Itachi's visit. So, his reporting to Jiraiya is what caused me to question the events of that night, he said, finishing up. This morning, while I was waiting for Temari-chan to wake up, I sent some clones to gather the reports you just read cause I knew you wouldn't be able to stay away. Sasuke grunted and steepled his fingers in front of his face as he brooded over his new knowledge. How did you get the reports? He finally asked. These had to have been highly classified, and I know you don't have clearance, Dobe. Naruto frowned at the old insulting nickname but relented as he remembered calling Sasuke Team first. That is the beauty of Kage Bunshin, he said with a carefree grin that didn't reach his eyes. Popping off a clone, it hinged into a perfect replica of Tsunade. I can be anyone anywhere. Useful that, Sasuke murmured, looking at the clone as it dispelled. Looking back at Naruto, he cocked his head to the side and regarded him with open curiosity. I do have to wonder why you're willing to share this with me, he said, gesturing at the reports. I was under the impression that you hated me now. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck and refused to meet Sasuke's eyes. I thought I did, he admitted quietly. Itachi called me on it though, and I realized that while I was really pissed at you, I don't hate you. What you did to Sakura-chan was extremely cruel, and I'm having a hard time forgiving you for that. The rest of it was just our rivalry gone bad and that curse hickey of yours acting up. Sasuke stiffened in irritation. It is not a hickey, he retorted in frustration. As for Sakura, you're married now, Dobe. Stop pinning after the weak fangirl. Sakura-chan is not weak, Naruto responded hotly. Yes, she was a fangirl, and yes, she should have taken her training more seriously, but she has serious potential as a kunoichi, Sasuke scoffed. Yeah, right. She is weak, will always be weak. When has she been anything other than a load on our backs? Naruto sighed and massaged the bride of his nose tiredly. Team, you never got hit by her. The only person that hits harder is freaking Bachan. If Kakashi-sensei hadn't been such a crappy teacher, all three of us would have been much stronger. As for her not being the load, forest of death when both of us were unconscious and she fought all three of those Sannin by herself. A fight she didn't win, Sasuke pointed out. But she still did it. Naruto countered. I'm sick of fighting about this. HNN agreed, Sasuke said. So, you are angry with me but don't hate me, still doesn't answer why help me and why I shouldn't hate you for crippling me. Naruto gave him an exasperated look. Team, you tried to kill me, of course I used something dangerous to counter. You're lucky I stepped down that clone's explosion, or you would be dead now. As for why help you, I think that you do deserve vengeance for the death of your clan, but focusing on Itachi won't fully complete it. Now you know there are others involved and they are closer to home, so what will you do? Sasuke gave Naruto a look of disbelief. What will I do? He repeated blankly. I will avenge my clan. Naruto gave Sasuke a very direct look, his eyes cold and hard. I understand, but if you make a move on anyone other than the elders, then I will end you permanently. If you want some free advice, do not act rashly. Those three did not survive to the age they did without being highly skilled. Additionally, if you hold to that agreement, when the time comes and you chose to kill Itachi, I will help you. Sasuke glared at Naruto and stood up jerkily. I don't need your help, Dobe. He snarled. I also don't need your threats or your advice. Rising from his chair, Naruto glared back. Fine, be that way, team, but I stand by my promise. Move against anyone other than the elders and your clan ends. Sasuke stalked upstairs and stormed past the returning Kunoichi, causing a mild panic attack in Sakura when she saw him. Giving a grudging nod to Temari, the only non-useless female in the room, Sasuke exited the house, slamming the door behind him on the way out. Disturbed by the sudden exit of the Uchiha, Temari carefully made her way downstairs to check on her husband. Finding him sitting at his desk staring at a bottle of sake, she noted he seemed much older and tired than normal. Naruto, she said softly so as not to surprise him. Are you alright? What happened? Naruto gave a bitter laugh and downed a cup of sake quickly before putting the bottle away. I just turned someone who used to be a friend into a weapon against our enemies, he said bitterly. Oh? Temari responded, moving around the desk to rest her hands on his shoulders in support. Yeah, Naruto said. I didn't lie to him, but I did slant the truth so that he would see things a certain way. With what's coming, I simply can't afford to leave Danzo unchecked, and directing Sasuke at him seemed like the best option as a distraction. Doesn't seem like something you would normally do, Temari said. Still, from what you've told me, that old man is dangerous and the Uchiha is most certainly not a friend. That's just it, Naruto said sadly. I'm not so sure. I don't still somewhat see him as a friend. He almost died for me once, and before he got that damn seal, our team was starting to come together. I just wish that hadn't happened, that's all. Temari responded. Personally, I'm rather happy with the ways things are, but I suppose I can see your point. Thanks, Temari-chan, Naruto said with a wan grin, reaching up to pat one of the hands on his shoulders. I'm happy about things too, but I suppose I'm a bit selfish and wish things were even better, you know. Temari chuckled and leaned down to kiss him affectionately. I think that's pretty normal, really. She chuckled. I figured I'd come check on you and warn you that it's a Kunoichi night again. You can come up and join, but if you do, you will be targeted mercilessly, so I would advise against it. Naruto paled. Yeah, no, he said flatly. I think I'll just go for a walk or something. Probably go see if I can find any of the foxes. Haven't seen any since we got back from Suna. Temari pursed her lips. Will you be alright? The last time you wandered into the woods ended somewhat badly. Naruto gave her a cheeky grin. Oh please, Itachi visited yesterday, what's the worst that could happen? Temari groaned and buried her face in her hands. Don't you have enough problems without tempting fate? Don't say things like that, or with your luck, there will be an invasion or something. Naruto snorted as he stood up and pulled on his jacket. I don't believe in that, he said cheerfully. Besides, I'm going armed. Just be careful, alright? Naruto gave her a grin and a quick peck on the cheek. Of course you know me, he said before darting up the stairs. Temari sighed and considered sending for the Hokage to join the Kunoichi Knight as emergency medical support. Yeah, that's why I worry, she said tiredly before making her way upstairs. Hey, where's Naruto going? Ino called out once she made it back to the kitchen. He ran by here with just a wave, didn't even stop to say bye. Temari took her chair and motioned for Hinata to deal her into the next hand. He decided to go try to find the foxes in the woods, and then he decided to tempt fate by asking me what was the worst that could happen. The kunoichi at the table all grimaced at that, and almost in unison Tenten, Sakura, Ino and Hinata all pulled out storage scrolls and set them down near at hand. What are those? Temari asked suspiciously. The girls traded glances before turning back to Temari. Medical supplies, they said in unison. Temari glanced between the girls and the scrolls before sighing and activating a seal on her chair, pulling out a similar scroll. My husband is such a pain in the ass sometimes, she said, laying it down like the others. Moving into the unnaturally silent woods, Naruto felt incredibly uneasy, constantly scanning his surroundings and holding himself defensively. He'd checked the gardens thoroughly and hadn't found any sign of the kitsune leaving only these woods if they were still on his property. For the life of him, he couldn't figure out why they would have left if they had. He told Reynard that he and Temari would be gone and the foxes had what they needed on the grounds. In the twilight gloom, he stumbled over something on the ground. Slapping a hand down to stabilize himself, he was unnerved to touch something furry and sticky. Pulling his hand back to his face, he caught the metallic scent of blood. Dropping down on one knee, he looked closer at what he'd tripped over and was unsurprised to find the corpse of a fox. A closer examination showed that the body was badly torn up with burns but not cut. What the hell happened here? Naruto murmured to himself, as he drew his kodachi from the seal on his arm. Checking the ground around the body, he growled lightly in frustration when he couldn't make sense of the tracks on the ground. Taking a step away, he closed his eyes and focused on detecting nearby chakra sources like when he was training with Kakashi. Sensing some nearby, he turned himself towards them, opened his eyes and headed in that direction. Much more cautious now, Naruto ghosted from tree to tree, keeping a close eye on his surroundings. Closing in on where he thought he'd felt the chakra, he was puzzled to see a group of maybe a dozen foxes standing around a small earth dome he didn't remember being on his property. Stepping out from around the tree, he stowed his kodachi away so he wouldn't scare the foxes. Yo! He said with a little wave, unconsciously copied from Kakashi. The assembled kitsune turned to face him, teeth bared and snarling. Only quick reflexes kept him unroasted as he barely dodged a stream of flame, leaping back into the trees. Ah shit, he muttered under his breath. I'm not gonna tell Temari-chan about that, she'll never let me live it down. In the middle of collecting her winnings, Ino jerked her head up and looked towards the forest. Oh, not again, she groaned. Something wrong, Ino? Temari asked for the group. Ino palmed her face in irritation. Yeah, well, sort of. Naruto just walked straight into another fight. Temari grabbed her fan, before Ino spoke up to stop her. No, it's not like last time, I think he's got this one, it's just. Well, he disarmed himself then walked straight into an ambush. Temari cursed and thunked her head into the table. Sounds about right, she admitted. So, how do you know all this anyway, Ino? Ino flushed as the others gazed at her speculatively. Shadow clones? She blurted before the interrogation could begin. I thought it would be best to keep an eye on him cause of what happened last time. Temari frowned at the girl. Not a bad idea, but you should have told me. I stress to all of you once again, my husband. Ino pouted and refused to meet Temari's eyes, gazing at the table. I'm sorry, she mumbled. It seemed like a good idea and I didn't want you getting mad at me. Temari sighed in exasperation. Okay, listen up, girls. Ino, Hinata, Sakura. Tenten, not sure if this applies to you. I am aware of the feelings you have for my husband, and while yes, I do find that concerning, I won't try to stop you from being his friend. Tenten smirked from her end of the table. No worries about me, she told Temari. Naruto's pretty cool and he makes awesome explosions of doom, but I have someone else I like. I think it's cool that you're being understanding though. I'd probably be all bitchy towards girls that liked my man. Sakura began coughing to try to disguise her laughter, and refused to meet the glare Temari leveled at her. Trust me, Tenten, she said dryly once she stopped laughing. Temari has her alpha bitch moments, believe me. Hinata narrowed her eyes at the pink-haired girl and spoke up sweetly. I'm sure you've never done anything to bring that on yourself, Sakura-san. I've personally found Temari to be quite friendly. Sakura snarled and visibly bit back a response. Her hands clenched into fists before she suddenly relaxed them, and she smiled back at Hinata just as sweetly. You're right, Hinata-chan, since I'm going to become an Uzumaki, Temari and I have disagreed on how close to Naruto and I should be. It's very worrisome. What would happen if I accidentally walked in on him in the bath or he did to me? Hinata's audibly ground together at the reminder that Naruto was going to be adopting Sakura into his clan, and her eyes turned murderous when she mentioned walking in on him. Tenten and Ino wisely stayed out of it, though both marveled at how Hinata's sweet smile contrasted with the murder in her eyes. Deciding to step in before the two tried to kill each other, though slightly tempted to allow it, Temari slapped her palm down on the table. And again, my husband. Also my house, so if the two of you want to have this little pissing match somewhere else? She raised an eyebrow, though she wasn't really expecting a response. Sorry, Temari, Sakura said, gazing at the table in embarrassment. I am sorry as well, Temari-san. Hinata managed to stammer out when she realized how rude that exchange with Sakura had been. I'm not your mother or your nursemaid, Temari said caustically. I won't try to stop you from feuding, but this house and these grounds are neutral territory. I accept your apology for now, but the next time one of you starts a fight like that, both girls involved get tossed out for a while. Turning to Ino, Temari fixed her gaze on the other blonde. That goes for you too, Ino. Now, what happened with Naruto? Ino shrugged. I don't know. I had a clone trailing him and then there was some fire and that's it. Temari sighed and opened up her scroll of medical supplies onto the table in front of her. All right, girls, who's got burn cream and bandages? Naruto cursed as the foxes followed him up into the trees and moved to surround him. Avoiding another jet of flame by dropping back to the ground, he summoned his Kodachi again and instinctively pivoted, the blade flashing in the moonlight as it sliced through the neck of the fox leaping at his back. Ignoring the way the head leapt from the body and sprayed him, Naruto dove to avoid a blast of wind that mixed with some flame to produce a small firestorm. Rolling back to his feet, he cursed and patted the small fires on his jacket out, heedless of the pain in his hand. In the short time it took him to do that, the remaining kitsune had encircled him again, and a vicious smile crossed his face as he glared back at them. You picked the wrong guy to try a numbers game on, he snarled before popping out several dozen clones. See how you like being ganged up on? In response to the new threat, the foxes melted back into the forest chased by the clones. Several minutes passed as Naruto absorbed information from dispelled clones. While the clones had managed 2 kills, the foxes were rapidly dispelling the remaining clones, completely aware of the weaknesses the clones possessed, causing Naruto's eyes to widen in horror, as he finally fully realized that he was fighting animals that he'd considered friends. Extraordinarily pissed at the betrayal, Naruto formed the full seal for the Kage Bunshin and pushed out enough chakra to create several hundred clones. Looking at the serious faces of his doppelgangers, Naruto issued his orders. Subdue them, alive preferably, dead if you have to. I want to know what the fuck happened while I was in Suna. The assembled clone army saluted and headed out to hunt as Naruto turned back towards where the fight had started. And while they do clean up, let's see what they found so interesting. Approaching the dome carefully, Naruto examined it thoroughly, even going so far as to circle it to ensure he wasn't missing anything. He thought. This is obviously some sort of earth jutsu, but for what? His mind ran across the image of the dead fox he'd first found, and he felt a sudden surge of hope. Obviously some of the foxes hadn't gone crazy, and the most obvious place for them to be was inside the dome. Knocking on the dome, Naruto raised his voice. Reynard, are you in there? It's me, Naruto. It's safe now if you want to open up. In response to his words, a small portal opened in the side of the dome and he saw the familiar snout of Reynard cautiously poke out. Moving back, he shifted over so the old fox could get a look at him. Raising his hand, he slowly extended it for Reynard to sniff. As the fox was confirming his identity, Naruto marveled at how beat up his friend was. You look like hell, he bluntly told the fox. Reynard agreed. I have been holding that dome for 3 days, Naruto-sama. I am quite simply exhausted. Naruto whistled through his teeth at that. No wonder Reynard looked so bad, there was no way he could have slept and to constantly expel chakra the entire time. Even he, the guy with way too much chakra, wouldn't want to do that. You can release the jutsu, he told Reynard. I have several hundred clones out hunting what's left of the ones that attacked me. Reynard gave a heavy sigh as the dome melted back into the ground, revealing most of the kits and their mothers but very few males. And so we are reduced again, Reynard said sadly. I'm sorry, Naruto said gently. They attacked me and they attacked you as well. I can't simply let them go. I understand, Naruto-sama. Reynard said sadly. While you were gone, most of the young and stupid males, even some of the vixens, decided that we had recovered enough that they could seek revenge for those lost to the villagers after Kyubi-sama's attack on the village. They claimed that we could never live in peace with humans, that it was our duty to strike back. When the rest of us refused to support them, they turned on us. It seems that even seeking refuge here has cost us more than we can afford. I suppose we'll have to leave so something like this doesn't happen again. No, Naruto said grimly, his face fixed in determination. No, if you do that, Reynard, then you're basically admitting that they were right. It will take time and effort, but we will heal these wounds between the kitsune and the foxes. You've been a very valuable friend to me and mine since you've arrived, and I would hate to see that thrown away. Reynard sank to the ground exhausted and refused to meet Naruto's eyes. I deceived you, he said quietly. We knew that you carried Kyubi-sama, but I was lying when I said that you were acting as his reagent because he was sealed inside of you. Naruto snorted back a laugh and gently rubbed the fox's head. Please, I knew that. I know that everyone thinks I'm stupid, but I'm not a complete idiot. Reynard looked up incredulously. You knew, and you let us stay? Naruto nodded, his gaze focused on the fox kids snugged up with their mothers. Of course. I know what it's like to be blamed for something you had nothing to do with. I was keeping an eye on you though, and despite lying to me, your intentions were at least honorable. You were just looking out for the other foxes, and you had every reason to be concerned about how a human would react. Your actions since have proven to me that despite the start, you are a true friend, and I would be honored if you and the other kitsune would remain. Reynard butted his head up against Naruto's hand to show his appreciation. Thank you, he said quietly and sincerely. I'm truly grateful that there are still humans like you and Temari-sama. Naruto paled at the mention of his wife, and he stared down at his ruined outfit in horror. Oh crap, Temari-chan is so gonna let me have it, he moaned. Reynard snickered but was too tired to move. Vixen can be a comfort, he said sagely. They also cause most of the problems in life, so finding balance is key. Thank you so much for that observation. Naruto snarked back, climbing to his feet. Creating more clones, Naruto spoke to Reynard over his shoulder. Unfortunately, I need to head back, but between these and the clones searching the forest, you should have everything you need. See you tomorrow, Kitsunjiji. Reynard sighed at being called old but felt far too worn out to argue. See you tomorrow, Naruto-sama. Reaching the house, Naruto tried to tidy up his outfit as much as possible, but the foxes had done a number on it before he'd gotten serious, and trying to hide the burns wasn't going to work very well. Bracing him for a tongue lashing, Naruto entered the house and was not surprised to find Temari waiting for him. What did surprise him is that she didn't seem angry, or even annoyed. Temari eyed her rather battered husband, and rather than berate him as he was probably expecting, she simply stood and linked her arm with his gently. Come on, Naruto, let's get you cleaned up and healed, alright? Really? Naruto asked in disbelief. I was really expecting, and I told you so at the least. Temari smirked at him. I can still do that if that is what you want, she reminded him. Naruto paled a bit at that. No thanks, I'm good, he blurted out, ignoring Temari's cat-like smile. Entering the kitchen area, Naruto froze when he saw Ino, Tenten, Hinata and Sakura all standing there with medical supplies in their hands. Wait, he said desperately. I'm not hurt that bad, just a few burns, I swear. Temari chuckled in his ear as the girls moved in on him. I think we'll be the judges of that. Besides, we do need to practice our medical skills, you know. Oh, before I forget, Tsunade-sama dropped by. She said to be in her office at 9 tomorrow, and I quote here. Put the files back before I pound you to pulp. Naruto paled at the message and paled further when the girls all snickered at him. As a matter of fact, Sakura chimed in. Hokage-sama was the one that suggested you for us to test our skills on. Damn you, Ba-chan! Chapter 27. A happy wife is a happy life? Oh, don't be like that. Temari chided a sulking Naruto at the breakfast table. It wasn't that bad. One would think you didn't like attention from cute girls or something. Naruto crossed his arms and maintained a dignified silence. It certainly wasn't a pout. Okay, it was a pout, but the girls crossed the line the night before. Grudgingly, he admitted that the nurse outfits had been interesting, but that was the rebellious part of his mind talking, and he was ignoring it. Temari watched the play of emotions across his face and smirked in amusement. Casually sliding her robe open a bit, she leaned across the table towards him and lowered her voice to a husky murmur. Naruto, I get all sad when you ignore me. Batting her eyes and pouting her lips out, she gave him her best sad face. Won't you talk to me? Naruto stared at her in stunned disbelief before he focused on the exposed cleavage. Mentally smacking himself and cursing his perverted instructors for corrupting him, he forced himself to meet her gaze. Please stop, that's creepy as hell. Not exactly what he'd been intending to say, and most definitely a mistake. Straightening up and tugging her robe closed, Temari's eyes screamed murder at her husband. Creepy, is it? She said in a dangerous tone. I'll have to remember that in the future, she promised, eyes now firmly stating that such a future would be bleak. Naruto sighed and raised a hand to rub his temple wearily. It's not that you aren't beautiful or cute, Temari-chan, he tried to explain. And I'm not saying that I don't like when you flirt with me, but you're my tough, hard-as-nails kunoichi wife, and you were making faces like the fangirls used to do to Sasuke. It really creeped me out. Temari relaxed her offended posture. That made a lot more sense than his first statement, or rather was more informative. Naruto, I would advise you to use the latter explanation and avoid the previous one in the future. You came very, very close to the couch for that. She paused a moment in thought. Still, it's good to know. I would really hate to do anything those worthless fangirls would do. Yeah, you're right, Naruto said with a yawn. Sorry, but I'm a bit tired this morning. Took me about half the night to get out of those bandages. Yeah, it was fun, Temari said with a dreamy look in her eyes as she remembered her and the girls wrapping him head to toe in bandages. Says you, Naruto retorted without much heat in it. I had a few little cuts and some burns. One little medical jutsu would have solved the problem. Hell, left alone they would have been gone in a few hours. You girls just enjoyed teasing me. Yeah, it was fun, Temari repeated with a sly grin. Still, it's not like you didn't enjoy some of it. I noticed your complaints died off when Ino suggested we change into nurse uniforms. Mostly caused by that time one of you had wrapped my mouth shut, Naruto said, rolling his eyes. Reminds me, would someone please remind Tenten that kunai are not used as medical tools. If I hadn't distracted her with that picture of Niji in an orange Speedo, I think I might have died. Temari snorted as she tried to hold back a laugh. Why did you have that picture anyway? Naruto scratched the back of his head and grinned sheepishly. Well, it's me in a henge, but I was gonna use it in a prank on Niji. I haven't forgiven him for the whole Koiki thing, but I never seem to see him anymore. Didn't you already get him back for that? Temari asked, confused. I remember something about orange Niji or something. Well, yeah, Naruto admitted. That was just the start. He dared to prank me and I intend to show him why that was a bad idea. Mahaha. Temari reached across the table and bopped him on the head lightly. No, bad Naruto. No starting prank wars with other clans. Naruto rubbed his head and his eyes teared up. But he pranked me, he whined. Temari rolled her eyes. Yes, the mean little Niji pranked you, you pranked him back. It's done all right? Fine, Naruto pouted. I suppose I can let it go this one time. Temari patted his head. Good boy. Her attitude became more serious. Did you remember to return those scrolls? Naruto shuddered. Yeah, I sent them out with a clone this morning. Still not sure how the hell Bachan knew I took them. Temari shrugged. She had some ideas, but they were only suspicions, so they weren't worth bringing up. What she really wanted to know was why the hell Naruto had stolen them in the first place. What, was she just supposed to ask him straight out? She mentally smacked herself. It was Naruto, of course she should. Naruto, why did you steal scrolls anyway? We have a copy of most jutsu here, so I know it wasn't that. I didn't steal them, Naruto replied. I just, borrowed them for a bit without telling anyone. Also known as stealing. Temari pointed out dryly. Hey, do I point out all the flaws with what you say? Naruto asked, trying to maneuver the conversation away from the scrolls. Yes, and you're changing the subject. While I would really like to know, I won't press you on it, just tell me you don't want to tell me. Naruto eyed her skeptically. Yeah, he really didn't believe there would be no consequences for not telling her. This had to be one of those sneaky woman tricks, but he wasn't sure he didn't want to tell her. It was just that this was his problem, though reflecting on it further, Danzo was her problem as well. Well, I told you yesterday I attempted to direct Sasuke against Danzo. Those files were evidence from the Kyuubi attack as well as from the Uchiha massacre. If you read them with a certain mindset, or have someone slanting the way you see them, they scream Danzo's involvement. Temari's eyes widened in shock. Was he? I mean, was he really involved in both? Naruto scowled at the table, his fists clenched in anger. For the Uchiha, absolutely. Dad wrote that the man will go to any extreme to protect the village, though his methods are more likely to destroy it. I don't know what happened exactly, but the cleanup and all the bodies missing their eyes just screams his involvement. Naruto relaxed and shrugged at his wife. I just don't see Sandaime authorizing something like the death of a clan without someone else pushing for it hard. That's rather disturbing, Temari admitted. I think I get what you were telling me about him being dangerous, though. If he was willing to wipe out a founding clan, I don't think he'd even hesitate to move against us. Nah, Naruto said with a grin. I've pretty much got the old bastard in a stalemate right now. I'm not strong enough to kill him, and he won't kill the village Jinchuriki without another option. We can't really move against each other directly, but I fully expect him to use proxies against me. Temari nodded her understanding. And so you started sending your own against him. I don't have to remind you to be careful with this, right? Naruto shook his head and got up from his chair to cross behind Temari. Draping his arms over his shoulders, he lay his hands on her protruding stomach and nuzzled her neck. I'm being careful, Temari-chan, but the man is a threat to our family. I may not be able to deal with him like I would most threats, but I won't stand back and be defensive either. Temari shivered at the determination in his voice and the nuzzling of her neck. She leaned back against him and relaxed. She really liked this side of her husband. He could be pretty cool when he wasn't being a spaz, and in a few years, he was going to be one hell of a man. Especially if she was around to keep him focused. Now, if she could just find a way to keep him from becoming as perverted as both of his sensei. A little perverted was good. A girl likes a little spice, but Kakashi was bad. The less said about Erosenin, the better. As much as I'm enjoying this, don't you have an appointment for this morning? She reminded him before he started something he didn't have time for. Don't want to go, he complained against the side of her neck. The old hag probably just wants to yell at me or something. Temari chuckled and patted his hands. Maybe, she chuckled. Still, you'd better go see what she wants, cause pissing her off more would be bad, right? Naruto sighed and leaned forward a bit to kiss Temari's cheek. Probably, he admitted. Still don't want to go. Comfortable. Temari tilted her head at him. Naruto, she scolded. Fine, I'm going, he said reluctantly, straightening up. Oh, wait a moment, Temari said, holding up a hand and moving over to the hallway closet. The shopaholic and I picked you up some things yesterday, and I think you should wear them today. Naruto eyed the bag like it was diseased. New clothes? But I like my clothes just fine. Temari stared at him and pulled out a burnt orange jacket with a black flame pattern on the bottom edge. Holding it out, she grinned triumphantly at his expression. I admit, that is really cool, he said, eyes locked on the jacket. It honors my father without trying to make me a copy of him, and it's orange. Temari just grinned at him and showed him the back where a white Uzumaki swirl stood out against the dark orange. Can't honor one without the other, right, Naruto? Naruto gulped a lump from his throat and wiped a few tears from his eyes. That was an incredibly thoughtful gift on Temari's part. So, what's the catch? Temari gave him an innocent look. Why, whatever do you mean, dear husband? Naruto rolled his eyes and found exasperation. Please, you're bribing me. So what's the rest of it? It's not purple, is it? You and Ino-chan seem really fond of that color. Nothing wrong with purple, Temari declared, hand on her hip. But no, we both knew you would never wear it, and that would make this pointless. Naruto said noncommittally. So, what did you get? Reaching down into the bag, Temari pulled out a long-sleeved black turtleneck, trimmed with burnt orange matching the coat on the neck and sleeve cuffs. Heartened by his lack of rejection, she produced the pants to go with. They were also black but had 3 thin strips of burnt orange running down the outside of each leg. So, what do you think? She asked. Naruto moved forward to finger the cloth. Honestly, it looks really good, but why buy me a new outfit? I haven't had the one I'm wearing for all that long. Well, first, you'll look really good in this, Temari answered. Second, this outfit will allow you to wear your Chunin vest. Naruto scrunched up his face. Meh, I don't like wearing it. Temari's eyes flickered and a look of irritation spread across her face. Naruto, those vests aren't just a status symbol. They are designed to deflect blows away from vital areas. Given the way every mission you go on turns into a shitstorm, you need the armor. But it's uncomfortable. Naruto whined. It's all stiff and limits how I move. The flickering in her eyes flared up into a rage. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. She roared, ignoring the way he flinched away in shock. You are a shinobi! She reached forward and yanked one of his hands against her stomach. You have responsibilities. In the face of those things, you will ignore discomfort as the meaningless thing it is. You aren't some stupid genin now, blindly charging into everything. You have to take every advantage you can to come home. I don't care if you have to hold an entire city hostage. Your job is to finish the mission and come home to me. Is that clear? Naruto backed away from her when she released his hand, his face working as he tried to process being screamed at by a woman who told him she loved him. It was difficult to process, and he had an overwhelming urge to escape and give himself time to think. I gotta go," he muttered. "I'm gonna be late." With a last look at a furious Temari, Naruto headed out of the house at top speed. As he made his way to the Hokage Tower, he tried to make sense of what had just happened. Seeing her husband fleeing from her hurt Temari more than she would like to admit, but this wasn't a confrontation she was willing to back down from. "Well, that could have gone better," she murmured to herself. She heaved a sigh as she went to get dressed for the day. Why was her husband so stubborn about the stupidest things? Approaching the tower, Naruto paused a moment to consider his choices. There was the door, so plebeian, so ordinary. So not Bachan offending. Then there was the window, the choice of his mentors and a style statement. Really, when he looked at it, there was only one choice to make. Hopping into the Hokage's office through the window, Naruto smirked as he called out. "Yo Bachan, you called?" He froze when she glowered at him, and he realized that there was someone else in the office with them. Oops," he said sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. "Sorry Hokage-sama, I didn't realize there was anyone here." Tsunade rubbed her temple, trying to massage away a new Naruto-related headache. The little brat had somehow wormed his way into her heart, and she viewed him as something like a cross between a brother and a son, but damned if he didn't drive her to drink. "Nice of you to join us, Gaki," she retorted. "Are you trying to take after Kakashi? Because if you are, I promise a great deal of pain in your future." Naruto snorted and crossed his arms defiantly. "Says the woman who gave the kunoichi free rein to torment me. And no, I was held up with trouble at home. Unlike Kakashi-sensei, I don't think I can get away with being late all the time, yet. I could have done without the qualifier, but since you are here now, let's get down to business." She waved a hand at her visitor. "You already know Shikaku. What you may not know is that he is the Jonin commander and chief strategist as well as head of the Nara clan." Hi," Naruto said, waving at the man. "I didn't know all that, but I can understand the chief strategist part. I was Shikamaru's classmate." He paused and a small smile appeared on his face. "Drives him nuts when I beat him at shogi." Shikaku perked up at that and studied Naruto intently. You beat Shikamaru, huh? Care for a game then?" Tsunade waved her hand to cut Naruto off before he responded. "Work now, torment Naruto later." Shikaku inclined his head in acknowledgement, but he continued to study Naruto with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Naruto sighed and sank into the chair next to Shikaku. "I feel the need to borrow something here, but I sense this will be very troublesome." Shikaku bit off a laugh with a snort of amusement, and a small smile even briefly appeared on Tsunade's face before being replaced with her usual frown. "All right, enough of that. We have a council meeting this afternoon, and you'll have to brief them on Itachi's warning. Now, obviously some aspects of it are classified, so I want you to report everything to Shikaku, and then we will edit it to avoid stirring up trouble with the council." Naruto nodded and proceeded to explain everything in detail, including his observations, to Shikaku, who looked progressively grimmer as the story unfolded. Courteously waiting until Naruto was finished, Shikaku sat back with his eyes closed and let the information settle into organized patterns in his mind. Opening his eyes, he looked at Tsunade curiously. "Naruto's observations make a great deal of sense, but is there any proof?" Tsunade glared at Naruto, who shrank back in his chair. "I'm not sure, best to ask the Gaki here. When I went looking for the files on the Uchiha massacre last night, I found that apparently I had already checked them out. A check of the security seals registered Naruto's chakra signature, though the guards swear it was me." "Got something to say, brat?" Naruto fidgeted in his chair as he was called out on the carpet, so to speak. "Sorry, Bachan," he said, face downcast. "I was looking for something to get the team off my back. I knew he was going to seek me out after he found out Itachi visited. Not sure if it worked or not." Tsunade stared at him in disbelief. "You gave the avenging Uchiha classified information?" As in, no longer a shinobi, loose cannon Uchiha? Seeing Naruto flinch, she took it as an admission of guilt. Naruto, do you realize how much trouble you could be in? Your actions have consequences. You're not a genin anymore. I know that. Naruto spat, angry at being lectured again. Frankly, I decided it would be a good idea to have the team pointed at a different target. I already got this lecture from Temari-chan this morning. Tsunade narrowed her eyes dangerously. Explain, she commanded. Well, Temari-chan, Naruto started to say before Tsunade cut him off. No, not that. About the Uchiha. Oh, Naruto said. Well, I sort of met him at Danzo. He mumbled. You did what? Tsunade asked in astonishment. Naruto sighed and repeated himself slower. I sort of aimed him at Danzo. The man has, well, issues, and I thought I'd distract him with the team. Naruto, so help me Kami, if you started a civil war in my village, I will pound you to pulp, heal you, then repeat it until I'm satisfied. You are not Hokage yet, you do not get to make decisions regarding the security of the village. She paused to visibly calm herself down. If I didn't need you on duty so badly, I would strip you of your rank and suspend you for this. She stated flatly. It is very fortunate for you that I can't right now, but don't think this means I'm forgiving you. I am extremely disappointed in you. Naruto sank in his chair in resignation. It wasn't that he didn't deserve the response he got, but he was already having a bad day, and this wasn't exactly making him feel better. Still, she seemed to be expecting a response, and he didn't feel like tempting fate. That threat to demote or suspend him didn't sound like an idle threat. I'm sorry, Bachan, he mumbled. I just wanted to protect my family from Danzo. I didn't mean to upset you. Tsunade sighed and dragged her hand down her face. I know that, Naruto, and that was the deciding factor in why I'm not going to demote you. Danzo is extremely dangerous and you are playing with fire. I don't want to see you hurt, understand? Yeah, I do, Naruto responded quietly. Good, now what happened with Temari this time? Tsunade asked to change the subject. Well, she sort of tore into me cause I don't want to wear my vest. Told me that I had responsibilities and that they trumped any discomfort I might have. Tsunade traded a glance with Shikaku, who was silently observing the byplay between the two of them. I'm not seeing a problem, Naruto. Well, she yelled at me about it, Naruto said. She told me that if I have to take a city hostage, I was required to do whatever it took to come home to her alive. That's sort of touching, I guess, but it seems wrong. Shikaku held up his hand to stop Naruto and spoke to Tsunade. Hokage-sama, if I may? Not really having an answer to what was troubling Naruto, Tsunade nodded her assent. Naruto, I think I know some of what's troubling you, the scared man said calmly. Perhaps she was a little extreme when she said that you should take a city hostage, but tell me, are you a shinobi? Getting a nod from Naruto, Shikaku smiled at him. Good, then the first lesson you need to learn as a Chunin shinobi is that there is no such thing as a fair fight. The true art of our craft is to complete a mission and make any fight so one-sided that there isn't even a fight. What your wife was trying to say, I think, was that you need to remember that you have no duty to the enemy, only to your family, friends, and village. He paused to allow his words to sink in. Does that make more sense to you? Naruto nodded. Yeah, a little, he said. It's sort of hard though. All through the academy we were taught to respect our opponents and to be fair in our dealings. Tsunade sighed and Shikaku groaned. That is a valuable mindset for academy students and for off-duty, Shikaku said. Your Jonin instructor was supposed to install a different combat mindset when you became a genin though. Naruto scowled in irritation. And Kakashi-sensei strikes again. He muttered bitterly. I'm not sure if he is just lazy or he's just a really bad teacher. He stopped, and his scowl lessened. No, he teaches just fine one-on-one, but for the team he just sucked. Tsunade sighed and shook her head. One of the flaws in the genin teams is that few jonin have ever instructed before. Given his issues, Kakashi should never have been given a team, but there were underlying concerns. Like the team and his eyes, right? Naruto said inquiringly. Among other things, yes. Tsunade confirmed. There was also the issue of finding a jonin instructor that could handle you if you lost control or tried to defect. My sensei had a great deal of faith in you, but you were still listed as a high flight risk when you were in the academy. Oh, that's just perfect, Naruto said bitterly. So what, if I ran he was supposed to kill me? No, Tsunade replied flatly. He was the only one sensei trusted to bring you back alive under any circumstances. Oh, that's different then, Naruto said, mollified slightly. Yes, it is, Tsunade stated. Now, if we have the issues covered, perhaps we could continue with the business at hand? Naruto and Shikaku nodded, and the three began to hash out how to explain things to the council. Temari spotted her target lounging in a restaurant, and stealing her nerve, she wandered in and sat down. Hi, I need your help. Anko picked at her teeth and eyed Temari curiously. Sure, have a seat, no need to ask or anything, she said sweetly. Temari gave her a confused look. I was under the impression that you preferred a direct approach, was I mistaken? Anko shrugged lazily. No, I do, but one should probably attempt to be polite when asking for help. She paused and considered that statement. Why come to me? No one comes to me for help. Her eyes lit up with a sadistic glee. Oh, do you need someone stabbed? Well, no, Temari admitted. She hesitated at actually explaining why she was here. Realizing that she was rapidly losing the Jonin's attention, she decided to simply get it out of the way. I need help with seduction, she said with a sigh. Anko spared a momentary incredulous glance at Temari's prominent stomach before rage flushed her face. First, I think you're doing fine on that, she hissed dangerously. Second, you need help with seduction, and so you came to the snake whore? She pulled out a kunai and began toying with it. Tell me why I shouldn't just gut you now. Temari blanched at the threat. For some reason, today was just not her day. Everyone she spoke to seemed to be taking offense, and in this case, she'd apparently just pissed off one of the most dangerous kunoichi she knew of. I'm sorry, she said slowly, uncertainty in every word. I don't know what you're talking about. I came to ask you for help because of the Konoha kunoichi I've met. You seem to be the only one that dresses to seduce. I truly meant no offense. Anko stashed the kunai away and stared at Temari steadily. You mean that? She asked, an odd tone to her voice. You're not just fucking with me, you actually came to me for help? Temari nodded, afraid that if she said anything, the volatile kunoichi would go off on her again. A mixture of unreadable emotions crossed Anko's face before she began to grin, not the slightly crazy grin she was known for but a softer, more genuine smile. Scooting her chair over next to Temari, she draped her arm over the younger kunoichi's shoulders. So, tell Anko Wanisama what's troubling you. Given your condition, you certainly don't seem to have seduction issues. Temari blushed, but the rapid change of mood did amuse her somewhat. For some reason, this woman reminded her rather strongly of her husband at the moment. Well, this morning I was flirting with my husband. Anko cut her off, her expression serious. Is that normal, or do you have a cold marriage? Temari blushed again but gave Anko a smile. No, to my surprise I am not in a cold marriage. My husband can be very playful and he does cater to some of my fantasies sometimes. I don't have any complaints about that. Good to know, Anko said with a lecherous grin. So, you were telling me about this morning? Yeah, so this morning, I was being playful cause he was sulking after we tied him up with medical tape last night. She paused when Anko began to chuckle. What? Hokage-sama gave us younger kunoichi permission to use him as a medical practice dummy last night. There wasn't anything perverted about it. When Anko cocked an eye at her, she amended her statement. I might have agreed to let the other girls henge into nurse uniforms for it, but that's it, I swear. I'm not judging, Anko said, fighting back laughter. She coughed a few times that sounded suspiciously like kinky to Temari before she blanked her face again. Okay, so what was the problem? I was getting to it, Temari said, a bit exasperated. So, loosen my robe up a bit and lean forward. Good so far, Anko said, cutting in. I know, now let me finish. Temari huffed. So, I batted my eyelashes at him and did a cute pouty face, and do you know what he said to me? Anko rolled her eyes. That was creepy or something like that, right? No, that it was Wait, how the hell did you know that? Because those are amateur tactics, my dear, Anko replied haughtily. I would expect something like that from an academy student or a fangirl, she said, unknowingly hitting Temari right where it hurt. For us more advanced kunoichi, we use subtlety and innuendo for our weapons. Temari raised an eyebrow and pointed at Anko's clothes. Anko flashed Temari a wide grin and explained. I don't wear these for seduction, I wear these for distraction. Now, class is in session, pay attention, my cute little student. Naruto dragged himself out of the Hokage tower feeling more than a bit drained. After they'd finished hashing out what to tell the council, essentially editing out any mention of Itachi being a loyal Leaf Shinobi, Shikaku had picked his brain regarding the paperwork he'd swiped. The man had an incredibly detailed mind, and he dragged facts from Naruto he'd barely paid attention to. Eventually he'd finished wringing Naruto out, and he'd been dismissed as Tsunade, and Shikaku had begun discussing contingency plans. This left him with nothing much to do until it was time for the council meeting and a burning desire to not go home yet. Hands in his pockets, Naruto strolled through the market district before he came across an interesting sight. Stopping, he leaned back against the wall and took in the curious sight of Kuratsuchi sitting alone on a bench with a bored expression on her face. He noticed that she seemed rather practiced at ignoring the glares from the general population, though her technique differed from his. She seemed unaware and uncaring, though a certain tightness of her expression gave her away. He mentally debated getting involved before shrugging and making his way over to the girl. Perhaps they could be friends, but even if they couldn't, learning about a potential enemy was not a bad thing. "Hey," Naruto said, sliding onto the bench next to her. "Kuratsuchi, right?" Jerking alert from her half-drowsing state, Kuratsuchi could only stare in astonishment for a moment as her target almost literally plopped into her lap. Mustering up her best friendly smile, she inclined her head. "Yeah, that's me, and you are Naruto Namikaze." Naruto scrunched up his face at that. "I suppose," he said grudgingly. "It's really Uzumaki Namikaze, but I prefer Uzumaki." "Oh?" she inquired politely. "I would think you would want to take your father's name." "It's complicated," Naruto admitted to her. "I strongly identify as Uzumaki, but I do wish to honor my father as well." "Like I said, complicated." Kuratsuchi grunted in agreement. "I think I get it. I am the Sandaime Tsuchikage's granddaughter. Those of you with the bloodlines of Kage will always have some issues with that." Naruto nodded agreeably, though he didn't actually agree. His issue was more that his father had stuck the damn fox in him the day he was born. From what he knew, it wasn't like he'd had much of a choice, but still. Not something he was willing to share, except maybe with Temari-chan. "So, I haven't had lunch yet, wanna come along?" he offered. Kuratsuchi mentally did a victory dance at the offer. Her target was willing, offering to spend time with her, and the bitch wife of his was nowhere in sight. Perhaps she could make some headway on her primary mission after all. "Sure," she said with a smile. "I'd like that." Lunch with Kuratsuchi was very odd, Naruto reflected once he'd parted ways with her. It seemed like she was trying, but just about everything she said was underlined with a great personal dislike for Konoha and Leaf Nin. Additionally, she seemed to be very interested in him, and while he would like to chalk it up to her enjoying his personality, he really doubted that was the case. He now really wondered what the hell she was doing here in the village, especially since she apparently despised her fiancé. She hadn't outright said so, of course, but her refusal to even speak about Sasuke was rather telling. Shaking his head, Naruto continued to stroll through the village aimlessly. He should probably head home, but he wasn't really in the mood to deal with Temari-chan yet. He was going to have to apologize if he wanted to avoid the couch, and it was a fair bet he might spend a night there anyway. Temari-chan had some really good points, but the girl could really hold a grudge. Leaving without resolving things probably hadn't been the best of moves, but if he was honest with himself, her yelling at him had frightened him a bit. Intellectually he understood that she was just concerned, but emotionally it was hard for him because of his childhood. Really, before Temari and Tsunade, he supposed, the only one to actually yell at him because they cared was Irika, and he'd had a hard time dealing with that as well. Still, it wasn't something he couldn't overcome, but he needed some time to steel himself for it. Kuratsuchi headed into the quiet, dismal Uchiha district greatly conflicted. On one hand she had her orders, and on the other she had a nice boy who was kind to her without cause. She wasn't so foolish as to believe he just happened upon her, but unlike others in the village, he hadn't offered even a veiled insult regarding her IWA heritage. Even more interesting, he'd blatantly told her that the damn Yellow Flash hadn't held a grudge against IWA after the war, and he didn't see any need to do so himself. She was worried that if she did comply with her orders that IWA would be making a very dangerous enemy. Still, orders were orders, especially ones from her grandfather. At this time, she really regretted accepting this mission. "Hey Naruto!" A voice called, jerking him from his thoughts. Looking up, he spotted Kiba bounding towards him, Akamaru on his head as normal. "Haven't seen you in forever, dude, how's it going?" Naruto shrugged in response to the question. Not bad, I suppose. How about for you and Akamaru?" Akamaru yipped something, causing Kiba to regard Naruto curiously. We're doing good, he said. Akamaru though says that he isn't talking to you, but if he was, he would say you owe him a steak. Naruto groaned and palmed his face. Looking directly at Akamaru, he apologized. Sorry Akamaru, I've been really busy and I forgot about it. Would you forgive me if I added another one and we went and got it now? Akamaru yipped something and Kiba laughed. He says that would be acceptable but that he is disappointed with the delay. So why do you owe him a steak anyway? Naruto chuckled and motioned Kiba to walk with him. The tournament we did, I bribed him to not get involved. Kiba stopped dead for a moment, his mouth hanging open before he closed it with an audible click and hurried to catch up. So that's what happened. I really couldn't believe it when he decided to play catch with that ball. I can't believe you had the balls to bribe him, and I can't believe he accepted. Naruto's chuckle turned into a snicker. I've been told recently that a ninja is supposed to make the fight as unfair as possible, and thinking back, that was my plan with you. I wouldn't worry about him accepting a bribe from someone else, but he knew that I wasn't going to hurt you, or at least not seriously. Since when can you talk to him? Kiba retorted. Last I checked, you aren't an Inuzuka. Sure, Naruto agreed. He doesn't have to say anything though, he understands us just fine, and he just wagged his tail when he agreed to my terms. Naruto reached over and ruffled Akamaru's fur, lightly getting a playful growl from the puppy. Akamaru's pretty smart, and when he grows up, he'll be an awesome ninken. Kiba nodded happily at that. While he had complete faith in his partner, many others couldn't see past the cute puppy. It really lightened his heart that someone else would say something good about his partner like that. Accepting the 2 paper wrap steaks Naruto handed over, Kiba continued to tag along. So, what brings you out and about today? He asked to break the silence that had fallen between them. Don't want to go home, Naruto muttered. I heard Temari-chan this morning and I'm gonna have to apologize. I don't know, dude, Kiba said skeptically. Did you actually do anything you need to apologize for? I think women just mess with us, so we apologize even though we didn't do anything wrong sometimes. Naruto laughed pretty hard at that. Not that you don't have a point, but yeah, I fucked up. So, what did you actually do? Kiba asked curiously. I didn't listen to her, and she was right, Naruto said, staring along the road. Then when she got pissed at me, I took off like a coward cause I needed time to think. Kiba whistled softly between his teeth. Yeah, that would do it. If I tried that with one of the bitches at home, I'm not sure I'd live to see another day. Naruto's eyes narrowed and he wheeled on Kiba, anger almost visibly radiating off him. Did you just call my wife a bitch? He asked in a soft, dangerous voice. Kiba shied away from the furious Naruto and racked his brain to figure out what he'd said wrong. It suddenly hit, and he waved his hands in front of him defensively. No, that wasn't what I meant at all. You gotta remember that my clan is bound to our partners and those are dogs. In clan we refer to the women as bitches and the men as hounds. Naruto eased off the killing intent and looked away from Kiba a bit embarrassed. Sorry, he said roughly. Been having sort of a bad day, didn't mean to subject you to that. Yeah, I can tell, Kiba said cautiously, Akamaru yipping his agreement. Tell you what, if you don't want to go home, why don't you come hang out with me and Akamaru? Got the day off, gonna just relax and unwind. Naruto chuckled. Sounds great, but there is a council meeting this afternoon. Aw man, not again, Kiba moaned. I keep trying to get my mom to take my sister, but she doesn't want to be clan head, so I get dragged along. How the hell do you manage to not go crazy in there anyway? It's so freaking boring. Meh, it's a responsibility, and if I get too jumpy, Temari-chan usually kicks me under the table. She's really great at things like that, which is why I hate arguing with her. Kiba made a whipping motion with accompanying sound effect. Ha, she's got you all trained, doesn't she? He laughed. Naruto gave Kiba a crooked grin. Maybe, but being married has its perks too. Kiba got a dreamy expression on his face, and Naruto snapped his fingers in the other boy's face. Not those perks, Kiba. I mean, it's nice to come home to someone who cares. Seeing the look of confusion on Kiba's face, Naruto sighed. Don't worry about it, just be glad you don't understand. Kiba shrugged. Whatever, dude, he replied. So, you want to hang with us until it's time for the meeting then? Naruto grimaced. I appreciate the offer, but I suppose I really need to get home and grovel a bit. Kiba snickered at the expression on Naruto's face. Sure, have fun with that. If you change your mind, me and Akamaru will be over at that park by my clan compound. Gotcha, Naruto said before a slight grin crossed his face. See you at the meeting then. Don't remind me. Kiba whined. See you there, I suppose. Taking his leave from Kiba, Naruto headed home and was surprised to find himself alone. He chuckled to himself, all that effort spent preparing himself and Temari wasn't even home. Wandering into the kitchen, he noted that she'd pointedly left his new outfit on the table next to his Chunin vest. Yes, very subtle Temari-chan. He chuckled to himself. Noticing a note folded next to the clothes, he picked it up and flipped it open. Naruto, if you're reading this then you got home before I did. While I don't apologize for anything I said, I do apologize for the tone in which I said it. The amount of danger you stumble into alarms me a great deal and I do not wish to be a widow. So be aware, I have no intention of backing down on this. Just put on the damn vest. Love, your Sunaheim, Temari Uzumaki Namikaze. Cute Naruto, though wryly reading the note. Well, I did say I preferred my tough, hard-as-nails Kunoichi wife. Seems she took that seriously. Fingering the new clothes and eyeing the vest with distaste, Naruto sighed heavily. He really didn't want to be ordered to do something, but would it really be that bad to wear the damn vest? Probably, he thought sourly. On the other hand, it wasn't like it was unreasonable for Temari to worry, and the new clothes were pretty cool. Deciding he was just thinking himself in circles, Naruto picked up the pile including the vest and went to get changed. After fighting with the damn thing for a few moments, trying to get the stupid stiff thing to be less uncomfortable, Naruto examined the result in the mirror. Grudgingly, he admitted that Temari had been right, and he really did look good in it, even with the vest. Honestly, he looked like a very serious shinobi, and that was certainly a good thing, right? Hearing someone enter downstairs, Naruto made his way down, prepared to apologize to Temari for how things went in the morning. He was somewhat surprised to find Sakura and not Temari, and he wondered where Temari had gotten off to. If she didn't get home soon, he was going to have to go to the council meeting by himself, and he really didn't want to do that. Sakura dragged herself into the house looking forward to relaxing some after a grueling shift at the hospital. She almost didn't recognize Naruto when he swept into the room, his new coat swirling behind him in his haste. Her jaw dropped, and she did a little double take as she processed his new look. Shinaro, her inner voice spoke up in awe. Dear Kami, when did Naruto-kun get so hot? Violently stuffing the voice down as usual, Sakura gave a low playful whistle at him. That's one hell of an outfit, she said honestly. Temari get it for you, it seems to have a bit less orange than what you get yourself. Naruto scowled and rolled his eyes. Yes, apparently Temari-chan and Ino-chan decided I needed a wardrobe change. Still, I can't really say that they didn't pick out some good stuff. If you like it, why don't you look happier? She asked before what he said really sank in. Wait, Temari and Ino picked it out? That seems a bit odd. In order, the damn vest, he said gesturing at it. Second, apparently Temari-chan decided to seek the services of a shopaholic when selecting these. Not sure why, honestly. Sakura said noncommittally. If Naruto couldn't see it, then it sure as hell wasn't her place to enlighten him. Makes sense though. Ino knows the shops around here in and out, and I'm pretty sure Temari doesn't. You look really good in that though, very handsome, but why does the vest bother you so much? Long story, Naruto said shortly. Short version, Temari-chan wants me to wear the vest for protection, and I think it sucks. The conversation got a bit heated. Sakura palmed her face. You pissed her off, didn't you? Oh yeah, Naruto replied dryly. First time I think she's ever actually yelled at me, called me by my full name and everything. Sakura winced. You did patch things up right, 'cause I am not getting caught in the middle this time. Naruto shrugged and handed her the note from its place on the table. Haven't seen her since I had to go meet with Ba-chan. Hoping she'll chill out when she sees me wearing this. Sakura read the note and looked up at her old teammate. You know, she said softly. I don't think she was actually mad at you. How do you figure that? Naruto asked in disbelief. Pretty sure she was pissed when I left, you know, the whole yelling at me thing and all. Women show their affection in odd ways sometimes. Sakura replied evenly. The tone of this note is not one of anger though. If she was really pissed, she wouldn't be calling herself your desert princess, or referring to herself with her full married name. Obviously I wasn't here for what happened, but I promise you, she wasn't angry when she wrote this. Oh, Naruto replied blankly. That really makes no sense, but I'll take your word for it. He popped a sly grin at her. You would know Tsundere women better than I would after all. Sakura growled and her hands clenched into fists before she realized she was walking straight into his little trap. Lifting her chin haughtily, she looked down her nose at him. I have no idea what you might be referring to, Naruto Baka. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a date with my bed and an overdue nap. Still chuckling over his joke and not having a clue as to how close to home it hit, Naruto waved her towards the stairs. Pleasant dreams, Sakura-chan, and thank you. Sakura gave him a grin and sauntered towards the stairs, exaggerating the sway of her hips just to see if he was paying attention. She'd promised Temari that she wasn't going to make a move on him, but after what happened with Sasuke, it was nice to know someone appreciated her looks. Still, there was something odd about the fact that she was seeking his approval now. She would never have dreamed of it when she was younger, but she'd been an idiot then. Oh, Sakura-chan, he said, causing her to pause at the stairs and look back at him curiously. If you're still interested and Ba-chan is free after the council meeting, I think I'm ready to do the clan adoption ritual. Are you sure? She asked. There is no big rush, and I would prefer you know it inside and out. From what I read, a mistake would be very painful for me. Naruto nodded solemnly. I've had a half-dozen clones studying it since you brought it up. I had another batch practicing drawing out the seals as well. We can wait if you really want, but I'm confident that I know what to do. Sakura gave him a warm smile. Then that's good enough for me. I would be honored to join the clan tonight. My nap suddenly seems more urgent. I want to be fully rested for this. See you tonight, Naruto. Yeah, have a good nap, Sakura-chan. I'll let you know if anything changes. About 10 minutes after Sakura went for her nap, Naruto was pacing nervously in the kitchen. If Temari didn't show in another 5 to 10 minutes, he was going to have to go by himself. Making a face at the thought, he perked up when he heard the front door open, followed by the distinct sound of Temari's fairly heavy footsteps. He was smart enough to never, ever comment on it, but the advanced pregnancy had robbed Temari of a great deal of her agility, so while most shinobi moved near silently, Temari didn't anymore. Temari made her way into the kitchen and was gratified to see Naruto fully dressed in the complete outfit she'd picked out for him, including the vest. Deciding there was no reason to comment on it since he'd obviously seen her point, Temari spread out her arms so that he could inspect her new outfit. Wow, was the first thought Naruto had when Temari walked in and modeled new formal kimono. She'd kept the same basic black one and the burnt orange sash, though that looked a bit silly wrapped around her extended stomach. She'd had 3 burnt orange strips added along the sides of the kimono, matching the ones on his pants. Additionally, she'd changed the inner lining, barely visible around her collar, to the light shade of purple she favored. To top it off, the back was emblazoned with a white uzumaki swirl to match the one on his coat. Naruto suspected that the kimono was probably reversible, which would allow her to have one kimono that would match his clothes or would be of her favorite color depending on what she chose to wear it for. You look very beautiful, Naruto told her honestly. Temari graced him with a warm smile. And you look very dashing and handsome. And that, Naruto thought to himself as he crossed the room to her side, pretty much made the whole damn day worthwhile. Kami, she's beautiful when she smiles. Bowing and offering her his arm, Naruto smiled at her tenderly. Shall we, my Sunaheim? Temari laughed lightly and accepted the offered arm. Leaning up against him, she bent slightly to rest her head against his. Rather stay at home and snuggle, but duty calls, I suppose. Naruto laughed at her comment. Oh, agreed, but Kami knows what those old fools would do if we weren't there. Last time they married us off to each other. Would hate to see what they did for an encore. Temari swatted him playfully as they exited the house. Please, you act like it was some sort of trouble to marry me. Naruto nodded sagely. You are very troublesome. Temari gave him a smoky look through lidded eyes, causing Naruto's pulse to pick up a bit. You have no idea, she said, using the body language lessons Anko had instructed her on to great effect. No idea at all. Chapter 28, Diplomatically Inclined. He is not. Well, that could have gone better, Naruto said tiredly as he picked at his ramen. It was all he could do not to snarl as he replayed events from the council meeting in his head. Oh, I don't know, Temari said mildly from the stool next to him. She held up her hand and counted off as she continued. It's not like you didn't threaten Danzo with root, insult the Uchiha by having his fiancée kicked out of the council, insult several clan heads when they refused to believe you. Not satisfied with that, I especially loved your description of the elders as senile old fools with their heads shoved up their asses. You truly have a natural talent for diplomacy. She finished with more than a hint of sarcasm. Naruto shrugged and slurped up some of his noodles. You forgot the part where I threatened to release the Kyuubi, he pointed out mildly. Hearing a startled gasp from the other side of the counter, he smiled at I.M. reassuringly. Don't worry, I.M.-chan. I wouldn't actually do it, but I needed to remind some stubborn old fools that messing with me is a really bad idea. Regaining her composure, the ramen girl smiled back cheerfully and went back to overseeing the ramen pots, though her eyes did flick over at Naruto with worry from time to time. Ignoring the byplay, Temari rubbed her face wearily. Honestly, I was trying to forget about that. Not that I disagree with flattening the village if they tried to make one of our children a Jinchuriki, but I would strongly prefer a method that didn't result in your death. Naruto stared at the Hokage monument for a moment before shrugging again. Well, I probably could do it, especially since Bachan likely wouldn't try and stop me, but I doubt they would have believed me if I said that. He drummed his fingers on the counter and thought, pretty much everyone in there could beat me individually. I think I'm probably only maybe low jonin skill-wise, but everyone always seems to forget that I can create thousands of bunshin. Temari nodded at that. Undoubtedly the council members had read reports about how many clones Naruto could make, but that was very different from actually seeing it done. She remembered her husband's fight with her brother vividly because it was one of the most terrifying things she'd ever seen. She let out a mental sigh and wondered exactly how bad she'd been in a previous life to have a Jinchuriki husband and Jinchuriki brother. It wasn't a bad thing really, now that Gaara wasn't randomly homicidal, but it certainly was strange that Kankuro was the normal member of her family. A slight grin formed on her face as she watched Naruto slurp down some more noodles. At least her life wasn't boring. She banished the grin with a thought. No, damn it. I'm still pissed at him for the council meeting. Was it really necessary to piss the council off like that, Naruto? I've worked very hard on making us seem reasonable and responsible, and you pretty much destroyed all of that. Naruto finished off another bowl of ramen and faced her, his expression grave. Temari-chan, I didn't piss off anyone that wasn't already against us. The elders, not fans of mine, though I suspect Hamura and Kohara actually approve of you. They certainly seem to be looking at you to shut me up anyway. Speaking of, I was sort of expecting you to kick my ankle or something. Why didn't you? Temari groaned in frustration. Believe me, I wanted to, she said sharply. She took a few seconds to consider how to explain while chewing her lower lip and thought. Well, she finally said. You are the head of the Namikaze clan, and we can't afford for you to appear weak in front of the council members. If I were to do something to control your behavior in council, then the assumption would be that you were merely my puppet and that I was the real power in the clan. That seems stupid, Naruto remarked. I'm a freaking Uzumaki, not a Nara. I truly value your advice, Temari-chan, but if I chose to do something, not even you could stop me. I am aware, Temari said with narrowed eyes. That statement seems to be missing the part where I make your life a living hell after you do something stupid, though. Naruto gulped and smiled nervously. Hey, I usually listen to you and you know it. He pointed out hurriedly. I'm just pointing out how stupid it sounds that I'm some sort of puppet. Of course it is, Temari replied. What you're forgetting is that appearances are important, Baka husband. And frankly, you just showed yourself to be a dangerous loose element today. I don't see how that won't come back and bite us in the ass. Well, like I said, it could have gone better, Naruto admitted. I didn't exactly appreciate the insinuations from the elders that this was my fault somehow. What was I supposed to do, let Han rampage across the village? So, I already wasn't in the best of moods when Hayashi suggested using one of our children as a Jinchuriki for the Gobi. I've wanted to take a chunk out of his hide since the Chunin exams and well, he gave me an opening. And by taking on the Higwa clan, you dragged the Aburame and Inazuka clans in as well. Lovely, Temari commented. Given the alliance between those clans, it was bound to happen, Naruto said seriously. On the other hand, I didn't piss off the Inoshikacho trio or Asuma-sensei. That's got to count for something, right? I suppose so, Temari grudgingly admitted. I have to admit, I'm really grateful Asuma stood up for me when Danzo questioned my loyalty to the village over the events in Suna. I figured he would, Naruto replied. I don't see someone as laid back as Asuma-sensei siding with a prick like Danzo, but what I really want to know is how the hell Danzo knew about what happened in Suna. I didn't put you punching me in my report, and Asuma-sensei told me on the way back he wasn't going to include when you bounced him off the ceiling. A slight smirk found its way onto his face. Not sure if he did it to be nice or because it would be embarrassing. Temari couldn't help her snicker at that but sobered up quickly. Was it a good idea to call Danzo on it though? That comment about an investigation getting to the root of the matter wasn't exactly subtle. Naruto sighed in frustration. I don't know, he said quietly. I'm really out of my depth dealing with that devious bastard. I probably shouldn't have done it, but no way in hell was I going to allow him to have you kicked out of the council meeting like Kuratsuchi-chan. She's an IWA kunoichi and you're a sworn Konoha kunoichi as well as being my wife and proxy vote. Seriously, Danzo can kiss my ass. Temari couldn't help the soft smile that made its way to her face as she listened to Naruto rant. As much as she would like to berate him for his actions, Naruto was very protective of those he cared about. It bothered her a great deal that her actions had been used in an attack against her husband by the old cripple, but it wasn't going to happen again if she could help it. Naruto's increasingly bizarre rant against Danzo was cut off as an ANBU entered the ramen stall. Uzumaki Naruto, your presence is required by the Hokage. Oh, hey Nico-chan, Naruto said cheerfully. Not getting a response beyond a blank stare from the cat mask, Naruto frowned. Hey, if you're angry cause we haven't had that spar, I've been really busy but I should be freed up in the next day or so. Temari palmed her face. Naruto, Hokage? She's waiting for you to acknowledge the summons. Oh, Naruto said with a slight blush of embarrassment. Sorry Nico-chan, I'll head that way as soon as I say bye to my wife. Hopping off the stool, he moved up behind Temari and wrapped his arms around her as he nuzzled the back of her neck. Don't know what Bachan wants, he murmured. I know I promised a massage, but I think you'll have to settle for just soaking in the onsen. The onsen isn't much fun by yourself, Temari replied, relaxing back into his embrace. Naruto chuckled and playfully nipped the junction of her neck and shoulder, getting a light gasp in response. So round up the girls, but don't forget I'm still planning on doing that sealing for Sakura-chan tonight. Temari stiffened and growled at him. You sure know how to kill the mood. She sighed in resignation. Fine, but can you send some clones out to round up the girls? I don't really feel like walking all over town. Naruto snorted and stepped back with a smirk. Nah, make Ino-chan do it. She's hiding behind the bushes across the street. See ya later, Temari-chan. Whistling a jaunty tune, he crossed his hands behind his head and took off out of the stand. Still recovering a bit from Naruto's embrace, it took Temari a moment before realization hit her. Oh, I'm gonna kill him, he left me with the bill. Giggling a bit, I tallied everything up and tucked the receipt away. Don't worry, Temari-san. Naruto-kun has a standing tab he pays off every week. I think he set it up with Dad after you started restricting his visits here. Temari said, not sure how to respond. You know that I don't have anything against him eating ramen, but I can't let him eat it every day, right? I nodded with another giggle. My dad and I miss seeing him every day, but I can't complain about the results. Naruto-kun is becoming a very handsome boy. Temari groaned and dropped her head on the counter. Not another one, she complained. Lifting her head, she half-heartedly glared at the confused waitress. It seems like every girl who has ever met my husband has the hots for him. Should I add you to the list? Blushed heavily but shook her head no. I'm sorry if what I said made you think that, but he's like a little brother to me, she said. Her blush faded a bit, and she gave Temari a bright smile. Doesn't mean I can't notice he's getting handsome though. I suppose so, Temari grumbled. It's just frustrating for me. I don't have to worry about him straying, he's not like that, but all these women throwing themselves at him sort of pisses me off. Temari sighed heavily. What makes it worse is that I can't make the ones that want him most to go away. Not without costing him most of his female friends and mine, I suppose. Whistled under her breath. That sounds really unpleasant. I'm not sure I'd be able to handle it if something like that happened with my boyfriend. Temari chuckled sourly. I wouldn't put up with it from a boyfriend either, but the baka is my husband. We're sort of stuck together, you know. Gave Temari a very direct look. That didn't sound like you actually like Naruto-kun very much, Temari-san. Wondering why she was getting a rather impressive amount of killing intent from a waitress, Temari blinked and thought back over what she said. I think this time you misunderstood me, she said finally. Rubbing her hand over her stomach with a small smile, she met Ayam's eyes directly. I love my husband very much, Ayam-san, but it doesn't change that he seems to go out of his way to make things more difficult. Temari sighed in irritation. I swear, if he was given the choice of two roads, one covered in a landslide, I think we both know what road he'd pick. Cheerful again, Ayam nodded with a grin. Of course, he wouldn't be Naruto-kun otherwise. Rolling her eyes, Temari carefully shifted herself off the stool and stood up. One hand on her stomach and the other at the small of her back, she tried to stretch out to relieve some of the discomfort. I'm sure it will be worth it, she told I.M. Still, don't let anyone tell you being pregnant is fun. I am beyond ready for these two to get out of me. Turning away from the giggling waitress, Temari paused when she realized that the Nico ANBU was still present. Did you need something from me, Nico-san? She asked curiously. I have been ordered to ensure your safety for the duration of your husband's meeting with the Hokage, Nico said calmly and flatly. Seeing the surprise and confusion on Temari's face, Nico leaned in and spoke in an ear whisper. There may have been a blonde brat that threw a fit earlier today about the lack of security for his pregnant wife. It is also possible the aforementioned blonde may have guilt-tripped a certain village leader about it. Temari scowled and unclenched her hand hard enough her fist began to shake. I'm pregnant, not helpless, she hissed. I'm gonna kill him. He had a valid point, Nico said quietly, undercutting Temari's rage. It's not well known, but ANBU keeps a list of potential targets in the village for hostile forces. Temari-san, you rank very highly on the list because you are pregnant. ANBU has turned back 4 attempts to probe your security in the last month. Temari paled at the news but still held on to some of her anger. Peachy. Does my husband know this? Is that why he threw a fit? Nico tilted her head curiously. Your husband is not ANBU, she answered slowly. As an ANBU member, I would never speak of things that happened in the Hokage's office, but my understanding is that a certain blonde was concerned that his enemies would try to strike at him, though his wife. Temari's eyes narrowed involuntarily. I see, she said dryly. You've been most unhelpful, Nico-san. One would almost wonder why. In response, Nico tapped the handle of her sword before fading into the background in the wonderfully disturbing manner ANBU seemed to enjoy. It took Temari a moment to remember, and when she did, she barely kept herself from face-palming. She'd totally forgotten Nico had trained with Naruto's mother, which was stupid of her especially since Naruto had brought up the matter of the Kenjutsu spar not 10 minutes beforehand. Temari stopped right outside Ichiraku and nibbled on a thumbnail as she thought about the encounter with Nico and what it meant. 2 things stood out really. First, Naruto was worried about her safety, but was unwilling to bring the matter up with her. That was probably a smart decision on his part. Temari was loath to admit it, but it was unlikely she would have reacted positively to the idea she needed help. Even now, the thought of asking for help with her security tasted like ashes in her mouth, but it wasn't just her at risk. Running a hand over her swollen stomach, she mentally sighed. She was willing to risk her life for her pride but not her baby's. Damn that idiot for knocking her up. The second thing she'd realized was that Naruto had a great deal more support in the village than she'd assumed. Probably a great deal more than Naruto would expect either. While certain elements of the population still hated and feared him, or hated and feared her, most seemed to be coming around. As much as Naruto wanted to make his own way, the announcement of his heritage played strongly in his favor. Since she couldn't train, perhaps she could find a way to broaden that support base for Naruto while he was busy training himself. An evil smile crossed her face as she considered the resources available to her. Oh yes, she had a new plan for her days now that didn't involve just watching Naruto train. Though on second thought, perhaps she could schedule a small amount of time to watch him. She quivered a bit as she pictured him training, stripped to the waist. Yummy. Shaking the thought from her head, she looked across the street and shouted, Yo, flower girl, get over here now! She couldn't help a small giggle at the sudden cursing before Ino stumbled out looking guilty. How did you know I was there? Ino asked curiously once she'd gotten close enough. Naruto's a censor, Temari said dryly before bursting into laughter at the dawning look of horror on Ino's face. Oh, Kami Ino, you should see your face. Why you mean he knows? Ino whispered horrified. I have no clue, Temari replied still snickering. He knew you were over here, but it is Naruto. He may not have any idea what you were doing. I'm not sure which is worse, Ino muttered sourly. Temari shrugged, not her problem. So, Ino, I need you to send out some clones and round up the girls. We are gonna spend the afternoon soaking in private onsen, one you don't have to worry about being peeped on. Ino grinned and popped out a few clones that took off running, though one didn't go far before it dragged Hinata out from behind her tree, causing Temari to sigh again. Do I even want to know why you two are stalking my husband? Temari asked irritably. It's not stalking, Ino grumbled. It's research. You do realize that is the same excuse Jiraiya uses when he peeps on the bads, right? Temari pointed out as she headed for home. Before she took more than a few steps, she turned and popped her head back into the ramen stand. Ayam-san, if you're interested, a group of us girls plan to hang out in the private onsen at my estate. You're more than welcome to come if you want. Me? Ayam asked with raised eyebrows. I'd love to once my dad gets back, but why invite me? Temari rolled her eyes. You're nice, Naruto likes you, I like you, and I could use another girl there that isn't currently drooling over my husband. She chuckled at Ayam's flummoxed expression, and damn near started laughing at the small pouts from both Ino and Hinata. Okay, I'll come once my dad gets back, Ayam said hurriedly, as if the opportunity might pass her by. How do I get there, though? Temari said in thought. Flower girl, you got enough chakra to leave a clone here as a guide? Ino shrugged. I think so, if it doesn't take too long. Even if it does, I'd be able to send another clone. Sounds like we have our plan, Temari said. See you when you get free, Ayam-san. Exiting the ramen stand again, Temari picked up the thread of the previous conversation. So, as I was saying, same excuse as Jiraiya. Ino followed along pouting, and Hinata wisely chose to stay out of the conversation. Hey, Temari, Ino said finally. Naruto wouldn't really let the fox out, would he? Temari groaned and palmed her face. Baka husband. Naruto made his way up to the Hokage tower and eyed his usual window entrance sadly. As much as he would prefer to use it, it probably wasn't a good idea when he'd been formally summoned. He was halfway tempted to do so anyway, but it was maybe, kinda sort of possible he'd already caused enough trouble for one day. That thought in mind, he snorted lightly as he walked in and headed upstairs. It wasn't like he deliberately caused problems, usually. Knocking on the door, probably the first time he'd ever bothered, he heard a muffled command to enter. He strolled in, shocking Tsunade if the way her eyes flickered between him and the window were any indication. Good thing I came in the door, he thought, seeing the seal around his usual entrance. Hey Bachan, you called for me? He said neutrally, trying to ignore the prisoner restraint seal. With pain enhancers, he noted with some alarm. Activating the office privacy seals, Tsunade steepled her fingers and regarded Naruto calmly for a moment. She allowed herself a small smile when he began twitching uncomfortably, but banished it as she prepared to get down to business. That was a very interesting performance in the council chamber, Naruto. So I've been told by Temari-chan, Naruto said with a sigh. I assume this is about my threat? Correct, as Hokage, I am unable to take sides in clan disputes unless they reach certain levels. The head of a clan threatening to release the Kyuubi is far beyond the required threshold. While I sympathize and understand your distaste with the idea of creating another Jinchuriki, don't you think your threat was a little extreme? Naruto stared at Tsunade in bafflement for a moment before attempting to release the genjutsu he was sure he was stuck in. Naruto, Tsunade said in a soft, dangerous tone. This isn't a genjutsu, but after the level of threat you used, I can't deal with you in our usual manner. Now, why the hell did you choose to threaten the entire village the way you did? Naruto flinched away from the sudden spike in her tone before his innate stubbornness kicked back in, and he jutted out his jaw aggressively. Hokage-sama, my clan is responsible for the Kyuubi no Kitsune. If the seal doesn't take the fox with me when I die, one of my descendants will be forced to take up this cursed legacy. I know this, I understand this, and even though I hate it, I accept it. If that pale-eyed bastard thinks that he can use one of my family members as a Jinchuriki for a different Biju, then he can go fuck himself. Those self-righteous assholes are very quick to declare something as being good for the village if they themselves don't have to suffer the results, but I guarantee that if you suggested using a fucking Hyuga as a Jinchuriki for the Gobi, he wouldn't accept it. I still love this village. I still dream of being Hokage and protecting the village, but if the council decides to fuck with my family, then that wasn't a threat, Bachan. That was a fucking promise. Naruto finished his rant panting a bit, and slightly flushed when he realized he'd been yelling at Tsunade. I see, she said calmly. Naruto, let me make something completely clear. No matter what Heishi suggested earlier today, one of your children would not be acceptable as a Jinchuriki for the Gobi, and do you know why? Konoha is a delicate balance of the power of the shinobi clans residing here. There is no way that it would be acceptable for two Jinchuriki to come from the same clan at the same time. She paused and froze him with a furious glare. If you ever use a threat like that again, I will bust you down to Genin, stick you in chains, and separate you from your wife and children until I'm sure you understand exactly how badly you fucked up. Is this completely clear to you? Naruto swallowed down his rage and his pride but found it very difficult to meet Tsunade's eyes. Yes, he managed to growl out. I understand completely, Hokage-sama. Was there anything else you required? Tsunade studied Naruto carefully, keeping the pain of being called Hokage-sama in that tone from showing on her face with great difficulty. No, we have other things to discuss. Sit down, Naruto, she said, pointing at one of the chairs in front of her desk. Naruto bowed stiffly. As Hokage-sama commands, he said tonelessly as he moved to take a seat. Tsunade sighed and massaged her temples wearily. Naruto, she said softly, it's not that I want to do those things, but as Hokage I cannot afford to let you make a threat like releasing the Kyuubi without calling you on it. I bend rules for you, but there are limits to what I can do. Do you understand? Still bitter about the ass chewing, Naruto took a moment to sort through his response. Bachan, I'm aware of what being Hokage requires, but threatening me with my family is a line you shouldn't have crossed. I'm completely furious about that, and the fact that you did it after Hayashi's stunt in the council meeting just pissed me off more. He forced himself to meet her eyes firmly. I don't care what happens to me, but if someone touches my family, the streets will run with blood, and I dare you to tell me any of the other clan heads would react differently. Tsunade was the first one to break eye contact, and she sighed heavily again. No, they wouldn't, but Naruto, it's the only leverage the village has with you. Normal incentives and punishments don't work with you. I fine you. I doubt you care. I remove you from the council. I doubt you care. I slap sanctions on your clans. That works how exactly? Your clans consist of you and Temari for right now. Every other clan head, even the Uchiha, is concerned with the public reputation of their clan, and push comes to shove, you couldn't care less. There are times you have to channel more of your father and less of the stereotypical Uzumaki disregard for formalities and appearances. Tsunade paused and gazed out at the Hokage monument for a moment. Just so you know, Gaki, if they touched your children, you wouldn't be the only one causing the streets to run with blood, but the more you act like a clan head, the less likely they are to even try. Tsunade's explanation, especially the part when she revealed she joined him in his revenge, cooled Naruto's temper, and he forced himself to look past the issues. Pulling a pre-made seal from his jacket, he stuck it on the table and activated it. This is a privacy seal I learned from my father's notes, he said quietly. I take it you don't trust the ones built into the office? No, Tsunade said, still gazing out the window. Sensei left me a hell of a mess to clean up here. She turned to face Naruto. You do know I would never threaten you with your family, don't you? Naruto shook his head. It took me until you said that before I realized that there was more going on than you chewing me out. It sort of clicked then, but I'd already dug myself a hole by then and I had to continue. Anyone listening would have found it strange if I just backed down, you know. By anyone you mean Danzo and Root, right? Tsunade said wryly. Naruto flushed a bit and gave her a weak grin. I didn't think you knew about that, Bachan. Tsunade rolled her eyes. You aren't the only one with access to a Hokage's journals, Naruto. She reminded him in a chiding tone. Right, forgot about that, Naruto said sheepishly. So, that was a show for the cripple then? Most of it, Tsunade said with a nod. I'm a bit irked with you for threatening the council with the Kyuubi, mind you. That wasn't the brightest thing you could have done, but given the circumstances. Yes, Naruto said dryly. That has been pointed out, but I was pissed, and it wiped that smug smirk off his face in a hurry. Tsunade couldn't help chuckling, recalling Naruto's description after one of his missions about an enemy that looked like a Hidwa with 2 sticks up his ass. Yes, I have to admit, that was amusing, but you can't play that card again, you know that, right? Yeah, but all that means is that I'll have to train harder and get so awesome that they know I could kick all of their asses if I had to. Tsunade rolled her eyes and snorted. Goes with the hat, yes. How did Temari take it? I might be sleeping on the couch, Naruto admitted. She was not amused that I ruined her diplomatic efforts in the council, but she said that she was forced to allow me to do what I wanted because of appearances. Tsunade said, tapping a nail on the desk idly. She's right about that. I think you firmly established that you're a wild card today. Naruto grunted in agreement before he adopted a thoughtful look. Hey Bachan. How did Danzo team know about what happened in Suna with Temari-chan anyway? I got lucky he backed off like he did when Asuma-sensei backed me up, but neither of us included her actions in our reports. I thought you screened that ANBU squad? Tsunade frowned. I did. I can't reveal the 4th member to you, but none of them are Danzo's agents. But it has to be one of them. Naruto pointed out. If it wasn't, it would have to be one of Team 10, and that seems really unlikely. Unlikely is not the same as impossible, Tsunade reminded Naruto pointedly. The old cripple is firmly entrenched in the village like a cancer. Unfortunately, like a cancer, sometimes you have to map it out before you can operate. Totally over my head, Ba-chan, Naruto said dryly. Do I look like a mednin to you? You know, every Hokage has had at least some skill with medical jutsu, Tsunade said with a snicker. Naruto glared at her with mock rage. Oh, you just had to go there, didn't you? He sighed theatrically. Should I send a clone to the classes, Ba-chan? You should probably send a few. I can't guarantee the survival of just one or two given your usual attention span, Tsunade replied. Ouch, that hurts, Ba-chan, Naruto said with a chuckle. So, was there anything else you need from me? I sort of need to get home and prepare for the adoption ritual with Sakura-chan. I need you and Shizen there just in case something goes wrong. That's tonight, huh? Tsunade said thoughtfully. Yeah, we'll be there, but for what I wanted to talk to you about. In 3 months, there will be Chunin exams held in Suna. It is a perfect opportunity to further strengthen the alliance with Suna, and I intend on using you as my messenger. Okay, but what about Temari-chan? Naruto asked. She's due not long before that, and I'm not sure she'll be fit to travel by then. Why would you want to haul 2 infants to Suna? Tsunade asked, baffled. Well, you want to strengthen the alliance so that when the Gobi reforms we can count on Suna to back us up and not just stay out of the fight, right? Well, yes. A stronger alliance is useful for other things as well, and I've put together an incentive package, but you didn't exactly answer my question, Naruto. Naruto shrugged and tried to explain. I'm sure that the package won't hurt, especially if I'm delivering it, but don't you think allowing his niece and nephew to visit him would have a major impact? Maybe, Tsunade conceded. It certainly wouldn't hurt, I suppose, but why would it mean as much as you're implying? Because he's a Jinchuriki, Naruto said bluntly. I certainly hope that things are getting better for him now that he is the Kazekage, but the fact that I'm willing to trust him with my children, you can't put a price on something like that for us. Especially with Gaara's history. Trust me, Ba-chan, this is a lot more important than you might think. I suppose I'll have to take your word for it, Tsunade replied. I'll have to arrange more security, and they'll only be able to go for the finals. More than that, and you know the council will throw a fit. Should work, Naruto said thoughtfully. Temari-chan would probably like to spend more time with her brothers, but she's more in tune with the political aspects than I am. Tsunade glared at him lightly. It would be hard for her to be worse, Naruto. She dropped the glare and gained a pensive look. I suppose that's a bit harsh. Other than your stupidity today with the Kyuubi threat, you've been getting a lot better at it. Naruto winced at the reminder. Okay, I get it, he said hurriedly. No threatening the asshats with the fuzzball. So, what's the plan for the exams? He said, changing the subject. Well, I was of 2 minds, Tsunade said with a grin. Since you were promoted outside the exams, it would be possible to enter you as a genin, but I decided you'd probably complain too much about that. Snickering a bit at the unamused expression on his face, Tsunade continued with a grin. Instead, I'm going to promote you to Tokubetsu Jonin and send you as a Jonin sensei. Naruto stared at Tsunade, his mouth hanging open in shock. Ba-chan? Are you sure about that? I'm not sure I'm ready to be a Jonin just yet, he said once he managed to recover from his shock. Full Jonin, no, Tsunade replied calmly. Your skills are growing very quickly, but I'm glad to see it hasn't gone to your head. The reports I've received place you at high B or low A for most skills. This is more than what is expected from a Chunin, but is still short of what we expect from our Jonin. You also don't have the mission history needed. Still, 2 facts stand out. The first is that you are simply stronger than the vast majority of Chunin, and your skill level is still rapidly climbing. The second is that I need a way to send you to Suna that doesn't draw attention. Your choice, brat. Genin or special Jonin? Naruto glowered at Tsunade. Not much of a choice there, Ba-chan. I'll take the promotion, but what team will I be leading? Well, Tsunade said with a smirk. I was thinking either Team 9 or Team 10. Naruto took a moment to consider that before his eyes opened in horror. Team 10, Team 10. He said hurriedly, bouncing up in his chair. Dear Kami, Team 10. Probably for the best. Tsunade said with a nod and a smirk. I'm not sure you're youthful enough for Team 9. Breathing a sigh of relief, Naruto sank back in his chair and let the adrenaline rush fade away, leaving him feeling a bit weak. He really liked Team 9, but they were friends best kept at a bit of a distance. Especially Tenten and her recent tendency to blow him up, or stab him with a kunai, claiming it was a valid medical technique. There was something really wrong with that girl, and he wasn't sure it wasn't caused by long-term exposure to Lee and Guy. Forcing his mind back on track, Naruto asked the first question that popped into his head. Hey Bachan, is Asuma-sensei cool with this? I know he's pretty close to his team, and what about the open slot? Already taken care of, Tsunade said with a smile. Asuma intends to work with his team until it's time for the exams, but I'm sure he'll want to talk to you as well. For the open slot, do you think Sakura is fit to take the exams? She's soaking up the medical jutsu and skills like a sponge, but she does live with you. I figure you'd probably know better than I would if she was mentally ready for it. Naruto scratched his chin in thought. If it was right now, nope, not a chance in hell. She's getting better, but the team did a lot of damage, and it pops up at odd times. Also, despite the fact she hits almost as hard as you, her physical skills are not the greatest. Still, got 3 months to train her up, and if I'm unavailable cause of missions or the toads, well, I'm sure Temari-chan would be delighted to help out. Tsunade winced at the thought of Temari controlling Sakura's physical training. Was a reminder that Naruto was capable of playing hardball as well. Should work, was all she said though. Naruto shrugged and stood up. Well, if you don't need anything else, I need to run an errand or two and head home and start prepping the seals. He paused for a moment and turned back to Tsunade. Hey Bachan, I can tell Temari about the assignment to the Chunin exams, right? I'm a bit leery of keeping secrets involving her bother from her after the last time. Tsunade waved away his concern. You can tell Temari, but remind her that the fact you will be my messenger is classified. I'm sure that won't be a problem though, Temari is a smart girl. Giving a nod, Naruto released the Namikaze's privacy seal and headed for the window, only to freeze when he remembered the rather painful seal around the window. Rotating on his heel and hoping Tsunade hadn't been paying attention, Naruto headed out the door, mentally rubbing his hands together gleefully. If Temari-chan had taken his advice, and she probably had, all the targets of his revenge were gathered in one spot. Chuckling a bit at Naruto's aborted window exit, Tsunade eyed the restraint seal around the window thoughtfully. Perhaps that one was a keeper. Naruto spotted his target where he thought he'd find her, and forcing a confident smile onto his face, he entered the shop and sat down across from one of the most terrifying women he knew. Afternoon, Hibi-chan, he said brightly. Anko paused to stare at him in amazement, Dango's stick clenched in her teeth like Genma and his Senban. You got a lot of balls to just drop in on me like this, Gaki, she said in an amused tone. What ya want? Naruto's grin got even wider if possible. Well, I have a business proposal for you. Anko rolled her eyes and chewed on her Dango skewer. Not interested, brat. I doubt your wife would like that, and even if she did, you're a bit young for my tastes. Try coming back in a few years. Huh? Naruto said, dumbfounded before his mind rebooted and he understood her. What? No, you're too old for me now, let alone in a few years. Oh, Anko said dangerously, her eyes narrowed in irritation. I know you did not just say that to the perfection that is me. Naruto was tempted to say he'd seen better, but his survival instincts kicked in and clamped his mouth shut long enough for the danger to pass. Yes, it's a nice package, he said neutrally. Still, not why I'm here. Anko snorted and relaxed back in her chair lazily. Nice save, Gaki. So if you're not interested, why are you here? Naruto adopted a sad expression. It's come to my attention that some of the kunoichi I know have been neglecting their physical skills in favor of medical training. He held up a hand to stop any possible response and continued. Now, I agree that mednin are very valuable, but they shouldn't neglect their physical skills, right? Anko nodded but was confused at his point. Sure, but what's that got to do with me? Well, as a concerned shinobi of Konoha, I felt that I should do something about this issue. Naruto said with a wide, toothy grin. I know that you care about the village as well, and it would be a civic duty to give those kunoichi an incentive to train harder. Oh, I see where you're going with this, Anko said with a snort of laughter. Sorry, Gaki, I only torture people on duty. Pity, Naruto said sadly, pulling out a sealing scroll and unsealing a fresh dango stick he took a bite from as he stood up and turned around. I guess I'll have to find someone else interested in these sealing scroll full of fresh dango. A kunai whipping past his face to thud into the wall caused him to turn back around. Alright, Gaki, Anko-sama is listening, Anko said, leering at the sealing scroll. Sitting down, Naruto slid the scroll across the table to her. I thought you might be interested, and just so you know, I have another one of those scrolls. Pausing a moment as Anko cuddled with the scroll he'd given her, Naruto cleared his throat to get her attention. So, this is what I have planned, he said with an evil chuckle. Temari relaxed in the onsen, barely paying attention to her companions, but that wasn't exactly unusual. She did enjoy their company, but with this group, the conversation almost inevitably at some point focused on her husband. She would be the first one to admit Naruto was growing handsome as time passed by, but she didn't exactly feel like talking about it with the girls. It really wasn't surprising that Ino and Hinata would gossip about Naruto, but though she wasn't interested in Naruto himself, Tenten was obviously in love with Naruto's explosive tags, and that was her contribution to the conversation. Ayam had added an interesting development though. As the one who'd known him longest and viewing him as something like a beloved little brother, she seemed to delight in egging Ino and Hinata on, but she did have some amusing stories about Naruto as he was growing up. Her relaxed floating was cut short when Ino slid over to talk to her. Looking Temari over, Ino sighed and Temari felt her eye twitch in irritation. Did you need something, Ino? No, not really, Ino admitted. I was just wondering why you don't wear your hair down more often. Something wrong with my hairstyle? Temari asked with barely suppressed annoyance. Apparently some of that bled through cause Ino raised her hands defensively. No. Your hairstyle is definitely you, but your hair is so pretty when it's down. She stopped and eyed Temari critically. A little eyeshadow, some tasteful lipstick, and with your hair down, Naruto wouldn't be able to keep his hands off you. Temari arched an eyebrow and gave Ino a flat look. Not a problem for me, flower girl, but I'm not interested in discussing my love life with you or anyone for that matter. Ino pouted. Please? You're the only one near our age that has one, and it's not like I can ask my mom or her friends about it. Temari leaned in closer to Ino. Well, there's one thing I can tell you, she said in an ear whisper. Really? Ino squealed before sliding closer. What can you tell me? Temari judged the timing and noted that Hinata had slid closer and seemed interested as well, though she was making a good attempt at hiding it. Well, she said breathily, I can tell you that I'm not interested in talking about it. Ino gaped a moment before she started snickering. Oh, that was good, Temari. You had me hook, line and sinker. Temari just grinned and enjoyed her victory. A victory that was short-lived when she noticed Enko appear on top of the wall surrounding the onsen. Greetings, the somewhat crazy woman called cheerfully. A concerned citizen brought it to my attention that you ladies have been neglecting your physical training. I'm here to correct that little oversight. Temari had a sinking feeling as Enko spoke. It seemed that Naruto had found an interesting method of revenge for being used as a medical test dummy. Now, with the exception of Temari-san, we're going to play a little game I like to call Dodge the Kunai and Not Die. It's a really fun game, though it's really only fun for me. Ayam raised her hand hesitantly. Yes, girl I've never seen before. You have a question? Ah no, I'm just a ramen waitress. Are you involving me? Enko paused and considered that. No, I suppose not. The Hokage frowns on ninja chasing civvies around. You're free to go. Ayam hesitated, not sure if she should believe the woman or not, but Temari grabbed her wrist and propelled her towards the edge near the exit. Don't worry about these guys, just get out of here before she changes her mind. Getting nods from Ino, Hinata and Tenten, Ayam gave them a warm smile before pulling herself out and exiting as quickly as possible. Now that Ayam was out of the way, Temari shared a look with the doomed Kunoichi sharing the onsen with her. I would guess that this is Naruto's revenge for the medical thing. I'm a bit concerned, he just has her chasing you, what's he gonna do to me? Ino began to pull her herself out of the onsen but dropped back startled when a kunai slammed into the ground near her fingers. Somehow, I'm not terribly concerned about what's going to happen to you, fangirl. I've got my own problems. A startled screech from the other side of the onsen marked Hinata's attempt at escape, and shortly after she moved closer to Temari as if seeking cover. As snakes, she sputtered out. Lots and lots of snakes. Yeah, that figures, Tenten said resigned. Is there an opening we can get out, Hinata? Scanning the area with her bloodline active, Hinata nodded. Yes, she left the exit unguarded, but our clothes seem to be missing. Did she leave the towels at least? Ino asked worriedly. Sorry, no, Ino-san. Hinata said sadly. We're gonna get you for this. Ino shouted at a laughing Enko. Besides, you can't chase all three of us just by yourself. Anko cackled and made a sign all the girls were familiar with, causing groans, and another 2 Anko popped into existence. Nice going, Ino. Tenten groused, getting an agreeing nod from Hinata. Hey, I can do that too, Ino said defensively, creating a half-dozen copies of herself. They lasted just long enough to give the trapped girls hope before they were expertly mowed down by Anko's bunshin. Well, that didn't go like I hoped, Ino admitted. Just get going, Temari said, rolling her eyes. The sooner you get started, the sooner this ends. Says the girl that won't have to run around naked, Tenten retorted. I'll trade you, Temari snarled. I get to walk back to the house, pregnant and naked. Temari-san has a point, Hinata said mildly. This isn't going to be fun for anyone. Fine, Ino grumbled. Let's go on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Temari watched as the girls darted out the door and began running as the 2 Anko clones gleefully gave chase. The real Anko watched them go before dropping a towel and rolled near the edge of the onsen for Temari. Not that I'm complaining, Temari said. But I'm surprised you're leaving these for me. Anko chuckled cheerfully. Well, not that I have anything against the other girls, but I actually like you and you have a valid reason you're not physically training. I figure I can cut you some slack, just don't go spreading it around. Drying herself off and belting the robe around herself, Temari shook her head. Trust me, Anko, not gonna breathe a word of it or those 3 might get a bit upset. Yeah, that too. Now if you'll excuse me, I have naked Kunoichi to chase through town. With a mad laugh, Anko disappeared in a leaf shunshin, leaving an amused Temari behind. As she began carefully making her way towards the house, Temari began thinking out loud. Well, this is something else good coming out of asking her for advice, I suppose. Entering the house, she saw Naruto's sandals present. Looking around the house, she was surprised when she didn't find him in the kitchen or downstairs in his office. Making her way upstairs, she was further baffled when she didn't find him there either. Heart in her throat, she slid the door to Sakura's room open, but thankfully he wasn't there, just a peacefully snoozing Sakura. Hearing a muffled curse from the 3rd floor, Temari made her way there and found Naruto carefully inscribing seals on the freshly scrubbed floor of the training room. Oh, so that is tonight? She asked after watching him work for a few minutes in silence. Hey Temari-chan, Naruto said, his attention focused on his work. Yeah, Bachan should be here soon. He stopped talking for a moment as he fully concentrated on a particularly difficult design. There, almost done. So, while we're still alone, are you sure you're okay with this, Temari-chan? I'm fully aware that Sakura-chan is not one of your favorite people. I already said I was, Temari snapped before reining in her temper. Sorry, yes, I'm alright with this. Do I have some misgivings? Of course I do, but if I wasn't willing to accept this, then I wouldn't have agreed in the first place. Alright, Naruto said mildly. I just wanted to double-check before it was too late to stop. Now, just gotta make sure I use the adoption seals and not the marriage ones. The what? Temari asked flatly. Seeing his grin, she sighed and thunked her head against the wall. Not funny, Naruto, not funny at all. Finishing up, Naruto stood and carefully exited the ceiling area before he strode over and wrapped Temari up in a hug. And that, dear Temari-chan, was my revenge on you for allowing them to use me as a medical test dummy. I suppose it's better than being chased by Anko, Temari grumbled. Still wasn't funny. If you say so, Temari-chan, Naruto said with a wide grin. Now, we have a bit of time before Bachan shows up, and I do believe someone here was promised a massage. Know anyone like that? Temari smiled contentedly and allowed him to lead her downstairs. She was still annoyed at his little joke, but screw it, massage trumps irritation, especially if he used that warming oil again. That stuff was just pure bliss. Ino slammed the door closed and leaned against it, panting. It had taken a great deal of effort, but somehow she'd made it home, and she'd managed to avoid Anko's kunai and being spotted. Stealthily making her way towards the stairs, she froze when her father cleared his throat from his seat at the kitchen table. Hurriedly ducking around the corner, Ino spoke up in a wavering voice. Hi Daddy, how are you? I've had an interesting day. I was working at the flower shop and then an old ANBU friend dropped by to say he'd seen my daughter naked fleeing from Anko. I thought he was joking, but I see that he wasn't. May I ask how you ended up naked being chased by Anko? Long story short, Ino said. Naruto hired Anko as revenge for us girls turning him into a mummy last night. I think the chasing us while we were naked was Anko and not Naruto though. Doesn't seem like something he'd do, if only cause Temari would make him suffer for it. I see, Inoichi said calmly. Go get dressed and come here, Ino, we need to talk. We do? About what? Naruto and what you're planning. Don't tell me it's nothing either, Ino-dan. Forget who taught you to read body language. Well, fuck. Ino thought as she hurried upstairs to get dressed. This was going to be interesting, she could just tell. Chapter 29, Night of Changes. Blue eyes guardedly met each other across the table before Inoichi sighed and began slowly drumming his fingers on the table. So, Princess, exactly what are you up to? Ino cocked her head quizzically. Not sure what you mean, Daddy. What makes you think I'm doing anything? Ino, Inoichi growled as his gaze hardened. While I would like to think I've been a very reasonable father who allows you a great deal of freedom, you are treading on very thin ice. Now, what are you planning in regard to Naruto? Ino gulped nervously as his tone registered. Rarely did the mild-tempered man sound anything but calm, and it was a warning sign that had served Ino very well over the years. I plan to marry him? She said, flinching away from the expected outburst. That never came. Inoichi sighed and rubbed his face tiredly. I'd hoped you would grow out of your fangirl tendencies, but it seems I was mistaken. I've watched your interactions with Naruto, and I know that he has done nothing to encourage this, much as I might wish to blame him. He lowered his hand away from his face and watched his daughter carefully. Princess, you can't stalk a boy because you think he's hot or strong, especially if said boy is already married. Inoichi was prepared for many reactions from his little girl, but the sheer fury blazing from her eyes was not one of them. Is that what you think? That I'm just a Naruto fangirl? She hissed. I am very aware of my faults. I know I'm vain, I know I can be shallow. I have a love of gossip and a tendency to nag, and I can be obsessive. She broke the eye contact with her father and gazed away sadly. I can be a massive bitch, she said softly and sadly. When his daughter turned back to face him, Inoichi sucked in a breath when he saw the unshed tears in her eyes. Eyes filled with a seemingly unknowable loneliness and sadness. It was all he could do to stop from throwing himself across the table to hug his little girl tight and reassure her, but his interrogation training kept him rooted in his seat. Once a subject broke and started talking, you didn't stop them until you knew what you needed to know. You know what though? Ino said softly. I know one person other than you, Daddy, that doesn't care. One person that truly likes me, no matter what. When I was forced to relive his life, I saw how Naruto sees me, and yes, I know he doesn't love me. A small smile made its way to her face, and the chill in her eyes receded. But even as horrible as I was to him, and I tormented him because it was popular to do so, he still cared enough to save me from the Kyuubi. Inoichi watched in fascination as Ino stood up and began to pace, one hand tugging on her ponytail, one of her usual frustration tells, as the story continued to pour out. I doubt he knows how close he came to dying, Ino said with a snort. Still, even if he did know, he would have done the same thing. For a girl who disliked him and belittled him. She whipped her head back towards her father. I love him for his selflessness, his bravery, his determined spirit, and because he's hot as hell under that jacket of his. That last point doesn't help your case much, Inoichi said dryly. You've also failed to say anything about the fact that he's married. As a matter of fact, you still haven't answered my question. Ino bit back a curse and sat down in her chair with a pout. Yes, I did. I intend to marry him. If that means I have to share him, it's a good thing. I've always wanted a sister, right? Happy now? Shocking, Inoichi said in dust-dry voice. Resting his chin on his hand, he braced his elbow on the table and rolled his eyes at his daughter. I'd ask why, but I think your little rant covered that. What I don't understand is why you think this will work. From what I understand, his wife is adamant that she doesn't intend to share him despite the fact that he actually can have a second or third wife. For that matter, I'm amazed you'd even consider it. You aren't exactly known for your ability to share, Princess. That's just cause Temari isn't fully secure in her relationship yet, Ino said flippantly. Hard to blame her though, arranged marriage and all, but I think things are settling down now. Something in that fight they had in Suna, or how they made up, changed something with Temari. She's a lot more affectionate than she was before. Don't give me that look, Daddy, I'm getting to my point. Right, now where was I? Oh, right. For now, she isn't willing to share, but sooner or later, she's gonna need reinforcements to deal with Naruto and his children. Inoichi groaned and stared at Ino in disbelief. That's your plan? Well, sort of, Ino said, fidgeting under her father's gaze. I intend to be the best friend I can be until that happens. Then when Temari is feeling swamped, she'll turn to me for help and we'll all get our happy ending. Ino, life doesn't exactly work like that, Inoichi said carefully. You can't just befriend a clan head and his wife just so you can stay close to them. Those are the sorts of things you do to enemies, not friends. Hey, I resent that, Ino said angrily. I'd be friends with them anyway, so I don't see the harm in having a goal that requires me to be a good friend. And what would Temari say if she knew your little plan? Ino flushed and glanced away. She pretty much does know. And she's made certain boundaries extremely clear. Does explain your change of tactics from your time chasing Uchiha? Inoichi mused. Still, don't you think she would prefer not having to watch her friends drool after her husband? Probably, Ino admitted. That is why I am very careful to not cross those boundaries I mentioned. And if your little plan fails? What will you then? Strip naked, prostrate myself in front of them and offer myself as their mistress, Ino said flippantly, causing Inoichi to choke. Nah, just kidding, Daddy. I'd probably find some nice lingerie and then do it. Ino sighed at the failure of her joke. Look, Daddy, I'm fully aware that this might not work. I'm juggling a great many details and several things have to happen just right for this to work, but I think it's worth it, and that isn't going to change. And if I ordered you to stop? Inoichi asked, crossing his arms. Well, worst case, I leave and move into the Namake's estate like Forehead did. She paused and her face became a mask of determination. This is what I want and no one, not even you, Daddy, is going to stop me. Besides, I doubt you really want me to stop or this would be a very different conversation. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do. Inoichi watched silently as his little girl stalked from the room, her head held proudly. Waiting till he heard the sound of the back door slamming closed, he shifted his eyes to the side. So, what do you two think? It makes me glad I have a son and not a daughter, Choza remarked lightly as he stepped in from the other room followed by Shikaku. It is certainly troublesome, Shikaku agreed. So, what do we do? Inoichi asked. At the moment it doesn't seem advantageous to interfere, Choza pointed out. If this blows up in your daughter's face, it won't splash back onto us. It wouldn't exactly be good for Ino, Inoichi retorted. I'm touched by your concern. Inoichi, you know that wasn't what I meant, Choza chided his teammate. Ino with a broken heart isn't really a problem for us though. Not exactly, Shikaku said thoughtfully. There are some major advantages if Ino succeeds with her plan. It would tie him closer to us than even the Sarutobi clan, but his unpredictability makes that result something of a toss-up. A good example would be the council meeting. Choza snorted. I admit I didn't see that coming, but the look on Hayashi's face was priceless. It looked like he just passed a brick. The three men snickered at the reminder before sobering up. That's part of my problem, Inoichi admitted with a sigh. Naruto's a good kid, but I've been in his head. He really will turn on anyone that threaten anyone close to him. It would be something completely admirable if I didn't know for a fact that he really could release the Kyuubi if he was pissed enough. But he has been much more focused and productive since his marriage, Shikaku commented. If we can increase his ties to the village and to us, the likelihood of that happening drops considerably. The man paused in thought. I think we need to encourage this, but with subtlety, find ways for them to spend time together. Invite him to the monthly picnic? Choza asked. Possibly, Shikaku mused. We need to weed out any clan members still holding a grudge from the Kyuubi attack or the sand/sound invasion. It certainly wouldn't be to our benefit if someone insulted Naruto or Temari. More Temari than Naruto, Inoichi pointed out. Naruto is skilled at ignoring insults thrown at him, but insulting his wife would have unpleasant results. There is that, Shikaku conceded. Still, aside from pulling strings to assign them to missions together, which isn't very subtle, it seems like our best bet. I suppose the real question is, how do you feel about this, Inoichi? I'm not pleased about it, Inoichi admitted. I actually like Naruto, and I think he'd make a good husband for Ino, if he didn't already happen to be married. That's the part that really bugs me. I wish I could say that I was sure this isn't just Ino being a fangirl again, but I can't. What happens if we encourage this and then suddenly Ino decides it isn't what she wants and leaves us hanging? Once again, I'm glad Choji is a boy, Choza remarked lightly. Same with Shikamaru, Shikaka added, though if mine was a girl, she'd likely take after Yoshino. The conversation ground to a halt as all three men shuddered at the thought of another Yoshino running around. When worked up, the woman was terrifying. Gee, thanks for that mental image, Inoichi sarcastically drawled, getting a nod of agreement from Choza. I am to please, Shikaka said with a smirk. So, ultimately the decision is yours, Inoichi. What's your answer? Inoichi sat back in his chair and closed his eyes as he thought. There were good and bad things about this, like most things in life, but in the end the decision was fairly simple. He'd always doted on his daughter, and he found it almost impossible to resist helping her get what she wanted. He just wished he could be absolutely sure it was what she wanted. Fine, he said, opening his eyes and looking at his teammates. We can assist her, but quietly and with the ability to stop if she decided she doesn't want him. So, how do we do this? The three settled in to hash things out and failed to notice a slight popping sound from the stairs. In town, many people were confused when Ino suddenly shifted from a somewhat sour mood to skipping along happily, though most just chalked it up to being a teenager. Naruto followed an extremely happy Temari downstairs where three disgruntled women sat in the kitchen drinking tea. Naruto, Tsunade said with a glare. In the future, when having guests over, may I recommend silencing seals? For a massage? Naruto asked, baffled. Shizen blinked and traded a glance with Tsunade. That was just a massage. Oh my, you must be rather skilled with them. Apparently he is, Sakura said a bit jealously. Still, silencing seals would be great. Temari sat in her chair with a blush. Sorry, I didn't realize I was that loud. Tsunade waved away the apology. Oh, we're not blaming you, Temari, we're blaming him. And how exactly is that fair? Naruto pouted. Such is life. Tsunade replied, rolling her eyes. Temari isn't the one learning Fuinjutsu, you are. But it's my house, Naruto said a bit peevishly. If I want to massage my wife until she blisses out, I'm allowed to. Not getting a response, he waved a hand in front of Tsunade and noted Sakura. Shizen and Tsunade all had rather vacant expression, and Sakura even had a small trickle of blood from her nose. Pouring herself a cup of tea, Temari smirked a bit at the reaction. Don't worry, Naruto, they're just jealous about your special clone massage with heated oil. The three women snapped out of their trance and glared at her. Don't worry, see, they're fine now. Why don't you go up and make sure everything is ready? Call for us or send a clone once it's done. Naruto shrugged. All right, he said agreeably. Shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes, I did most of the hard stuff earlier. Seeing a chance to irritate her audience, and wanting to do it anyway, Temari tugged Naruto's jacket, pulling him down into a very thorough kiss. Releasing him and watching him stagger off, Temari turned back to her guests with a smug grin. Lucky bitch. All three growled in unison, causing her grin to widen. A little, Temari replied. He's not fully housebroken, but those massages are to die for. Seriously, he makes enough clones that he can do like my entire body at once and then add in the heated oil. Temari trailed off with an expression of bliss, though the renewed expressions of jealousy added to her enjoyment considerably. If you're done rubbing it in our face, an annoyed Tsunade said. Is there a reason you sent him off? Temari's happy expression vanished, and she instantly became more serious. I know that Naruto had his clones study this, but I'm still a little concerned. If something goes wrong, do you know enough about sealing to fix things, Tsunade-sama? Nope, Tsunade replied bluntly. We are totally reliant on Naruto knowing what he's doing. Still, if there's one thing I've learned recently, you should never bet against the brat. Sakura sat her teacup down and turned in her chair to face Temari directly. From what I understand, any problems with the sealing will affect me and not Naruto. She paused and gave Temari a very bright smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. I choose to believe him when he says he knows what he's doing, but in the worst case, we don't lose anyone important. Temari grit her teeth and noticed Tsunade and Shizen watching the conversation with interest, but obviously not interested in joining in. You're not worthless or useless, Sakura, Temari finally said. I don't like you much, but you are important to my husband. Imagine how he would feel if he heard you say that. He'd be pretty pissed, Naruto said, making his way back into the kitchen. I didn't know you were there, Sakura said with a blush as she refused to meet his eyes. Obviously, Naruto said, rolling his eyes. Moving in front of Sakura's chair, he lifted her chin so that she could gaze into his eyes. We've had this conversation, Sakura-chan. You're getting better at not doing it, but I'm still disturbed when you refer to yourself as worthless. I suppose I do understand why, but come on, Sakura-chan, you're stronger than that. Sakura reached up and moved his hand away, allowing her to drop her gaze. I appreciate that, Naruto, but in this case, you're wrong. You're worth more to the village than I am. Naruto frowned, but for once recognized a futile battle he didn't have time for. Turning to the others, he pasted a cheery smile on his face and clapped his hands together. All right, we're all set up and you ladies can come upstairs whenever. Having announced his news, the clone disappeared and several curses drifted down the stairs as Naruto absorbed his clone's memories. With a shrug, Temari stood up and headed upstairs, followed by the others. She arched an eyebrow when Shizen moved up next to her but remained silent. Well, that was interesting, Shizen said quietly. Shooting a glance over her shoulder to see Tsunade talking to Sakura, she faced forward again and lowered her voice further. I think I can see why you don't like her much. How close are they? Too close for my tastes, Temari muttered back. I don't really have to worry about them physically, but that emotional bond of theirs annoys me. So why allow this then? I've asked myself that a few times and I'm still not sure why, Temari said dryly. I suppose it's mostly because this is important to Naruto. Makes sense, Shizen said with a shrug. Temari snorted. If you say so. I think I might have been infected with Naruto's particular brand of crazy. The two shared a laugh as they reached the training room. Ah, good you're here, Naruto said cheerfully when he noticed the women enter the room. I made a line on the floor over there. You need to stay behind it to avoid messing up the seal. Tsunade gave a low whistle under her breath as he looked over the complicated seal inked out over half the training room floor. This is a really complex seal, Naruto. Are you absolutely sure you know what you're doing? Oh, come on, Ba-chan, we've gone over this, Naruto said irritably. I studied the books and copied out the seals exactly, and that's why you're here anyway, in case I did mess something up. Fine, Tsunade muttered distractedly as she continued to study the seal. Still, this is really impressive. I mean, look at the elegance of the lines here. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu is simply amazing. Right, Ba-chan? Naruto said, a bit confused until he remembered that she was part Uzumaki. I wonder if seeing this is reminding her of Mito-ba-chan? Coughing nervously into his hand, Naruto turned to Sakura. Okay, Sakura-chan, if I would just get naked and move here, we can get started. I'm sorry, what? Temari asked, unamused as Sakura blushed heavily. Naruto sighed and his shoulders slumped. I have to paint seals on Sakura-chan's body, he explained. Pretty much all of her body. Didn't you read up on this? Must have skipped over that part, Temari replied acidly. It's really necessary? It is, Sakura replied before Naruto could. I sort of forgot about that part though. Naruto, can you turn around please? Why? Naruto asked. I'm going to be painting seals on you in a moment anyway. Temari palmed her face as Sakura flushed an even darker red. Just turn around, Naruto. Whatever, Naruto muttered as he turned his back. Listening to Sakura slide her clothes off was actually more of a turn-on for him than watching her do it, but no way in hell was he going to say that. Once the sound stopped, he tilted his head and called out. Can I turn around now? Sure. Sakura stammered a bit. Turning around, he found Sakura in the same place, only this time minus her clothes. The pink-haired girl was blushing furiously and had an arm across her chest and a hand covering her crotch. Deciding this would be easier if he just pretended she was clothed, Naruto nodded at her. Okay, Sakura-chan, I need you to come here and lay down in the cleared space, but don't step on any of the lines. Turning to the other women in the room as Sakura started forward, Naruto gave them a thumbs up. Okay, so we're getting started now. I don't care you ladies chat, but please no sudden noises or movements. Satisfied at their nods, Naruto turned around and carefully made his way to where Sakura was laying on her stomach. Sakura-chan, the seal goes on your front. I know that, she hissed. I'm just extremely embarrassed, alright? Taking a deep breath, Naruto knelt next to her and whispered in her ear. Sakura-chan, you being all embarrassed is sort of turning me on, so for both our sakes, take a deep breath, relax and roll onto your back so we can get this done. Now completely mortified, Sakura rolled over hoping that Naruto wouldn't notice that the situation wasn't turning just him on. The last thing she needed right now was for him to notice and say something stupid, drawing down the wrath of Temari. Once Sakura rolled over, Naruto did his best to remain focused on the lines he was painting and not on the nude body of his old crush. It wasn't really working the way he'd hoped though. Even if the way he felt about her had changed, the fact he still found her extremely attractive didn't. Looking for a way to distract himself, he began talking, which of course caused its own problems. "Nah, Sakura-chan, looks like I win that bet with Kiba." It took a moment for Sakura to place it, but when she did, it was all she could do not to sit up and punch him. Flushing an even deeper red than before, Sakura damn near cried in embarrassment. "What bet?" Temari called over, her attention drawn from the conversation with Tsunade when Naruto spoke up. "Ah crap," Naruto muttered under his breath before deciding he might as well come clean. Back at the academy, first day of classes. Kiba and Akumura came up to Sakura, sniffing the air around them. Turns out, it's the way young Inuzuka familiarized themselves, but that's a different story. Anyway, Kiba looks at Sakura-chan's hair and just bluntly asked her if she was a natural pink. I thought she was really cute, so I told Kiba that of course it was, and he bet me that she wasn't. "Naruto," Temari said, rolling her eyes and tone mildly annoyed. "It's not a big deal," Naruto replied cheerfully. He suddenly looked more thoughtful. "Interestingly enough, that was the day I found out exactly how hard Sakura-chan can punch." "Yeah, somehow not surprised," Temari said with another eye roll. "So what was the bet?" I can't really remember," Naruto lied. "I can't," Sakura said with a sigh. "Those two idiots decided the loser had to find out exactly how girls were different from boys." Naruto gave her a look as he finished up a line on her arm. "I didn't know you knew that," he said quietly. "Yeah, well, you and Kiba aren't exactly quiet, and you made the bet right in front of me. Why the hell do you think you got hit?" "No fair, you didn't hit Kiba." Naruto pouted. "He had a cute puppy," Sakura pointed out. "So not fair." "Meh, enough about that," Temari said after marveling at the stupidity of young boys. "What I really want to know is when the hell Pinky got those." "I've had them for a while," Sakura said through gritted teeth. "I just bind them cause otherwise they get in the way." Can we not talk about Sakura-chan's bust when it's right in front of me, please?" Naruto squeaked out in embarrassment. "I have to draw seals across it, and I would like to be focused." Yeah, Temari growled. "Keep in mind I'll be watching you, dear husband." "Jealous much, Temari?" Sakura asked smugly. "A little," Temari replied before an evil grin formed. "Course, I've got bigger and Naruto certainly likes them. It's really great when he massages them, so strong but so gentle." Sakura whimpered a bit in defeat and Naruto glared at Temari in annoyance. "Not helping Temari-chan." "Sorry," Temari said before muttering under her breath. "Little bitch started it though." Shizen leaned in and whispered to Tsunade. "Is it bad that I feel like I should pop some popcorn for this?" Tsunade snorted and continued to enjoy the show. "No, this is comedy gold," she replied, snickering softly. "You're so bad, Tsunade-sama," Shizen said with a snicker of her own. Looking for a safe change of subject, Naruto remembered something he'd been wondering about. "Hey Bachan. So according to my mother's diary, the Uzumaki and Senju clans are blood relatives. As well as the Uchiha, I guess, but I don't really feel like claiming them. Anyway, how closely related are we?" "Distant cousins at best," Tsunade said after giving it some thought. "Family legend states that the Uzumaki, Senju, and Uchiha clans all descend from the Rikudo Sennin, but I think you and I are connected through my grandmother Mido, so third cousins twice removed, maybe?" "Oh," Naruto mumbled. "I'm not really sure what that means." "It means that she is 2 generations before you and that her great-great-grandparent was your great-great-great-great-grandparent," Sakura spoke up, joining the conversation. Doing the math in her head, Tsunade nodded. "I think she has the math right, so it means it's a pretty distant relationship." "You know, that's really damn complicated," Naruto complained. "I think I'll just stick to calling you Bachan, cousin." Naruto paused in his ceiling long enough to stick his tongue out at Tsunade, though the smile on her face made him extremely nervous. "That's really interesting," Temari chimed in. "I thought the Senju and the Uchiha were bitter enemies until the founding of the villages." "They were," Tsunade said with a nod. "Doesn't mean that they weren't still distantly related. There is no feud like a family feud, though it annoys me to consider Uchiha as family. Not terribly fond of them myself," Naruto piped in. "Still, it's really odd that all 3 clans are almost entirely wiped out." Naruto made a gesture at Temari and her stomach. "Obviously the Uzumaki are beginning to make a comeback and the Uchiha could, but what about you, Bachan?" "My clan dies with me," Tsunade said sadly. I'm far too old for children and there are no other senju. While the women in the room looked sad, Naruto was just confused. I know you're old Bachan, but if it's a medical issue, aren't you like the greatest Medine ever? It's not that simple, Tsunade said testily. I don't have time for the research. Naruto sighed and carefully finished the line he was working on before turning to face Tsunade. Bachan, I keep telling you this, but shadow fucking clones. Tsunade's eyes narrowed at Naruto, and her eye began to twitch. Not everyone can use them like you, Naruto. The feedback from the amount of clones you make should melt your brain, but I suppose you need one before that could happen. Temari opened her mouth to rip into Tsunade but stopped when Shizen grabbed her arm. Don't, she warned in a hurried whisper. You do not want to get between these two when they get like this. Last time destroyed a street and that was before Naruto stepped up his training. Naruto regarded Tsunade mildly, no sign of his temper at all. So, how do you explain Ino? He asked softly. Her chakra limits how many she can make, but she spams out a half-dozen clones quite a bit now. I know that this is a delicate subject for you, Tsunade, but even if you were right about the effects, sending one clone out to research wouldn't harm you, would it? Turning back to Sakura and beginning work on the final lines, he raised his voice a little so she would clearly hear him. Your loved ones, the ones you were going to sacrifice Erosenin and me to Hibi Team 4, do you think they would be happy your line ends with you? Tsunade stood quivering in a sick mix of rage and guilt before she stormed from the room. Oh Naruto, you shouldn't have said that. Shizen chided him. Tsunade-sama still has problems when those two are mentioned, and I know she hates that her line is ending. I'm not totally unsympathetic, Naruto said distractedly. The truth is that she needed to hear that and no one else would dare. Finishing up the last seal, Naruto turned to face Shizen directly. She's built up a prison of lies in her head, that she can't, that it's too late, and so on. Someone has to call her bluff and smash that cage, and well, you're far too polite and her apprentice. I'm probably about the only one that can get away with it cause we both know who I remind her of. You've certainly matured since I met you, Shizen said a bit disbelievingly. Not that much he hasn't, Temari grumbled. Just today he hired Anko to chase Ino, Hinata and Tenten naked through town. Naruto! Shizen gasped in disbelief. I can't believe you did that. I didn't, he said defensively, waving his arms around in front of him. I hired her to chase them, yes, but I didn't say chase them naked. Wait, were they naked or was Anko? They were, Temari said with a roll of her eyes until she thought about it. Though I suppose I could see where you might get confused. Naruto palmed his face and groaned. Great, just freaking great. Now I have to watch out of the counter revenge. She did leave you alone though, right, Temari-chan? Left me a towel and a robe after she stole the girls. Temari confirmed. That was probably the only thing that saved you from me, by the way. Good to know, Naruto said wryly. I don't mean to cause problems here, but is there any way we could get this done? Sakura called. I'm kinda tired of laying here on the floor. Naruto winced, he'd gotten a bit distracted. Sure thing, Sakura-chan. Just gotta go drag Bachan back and we'll get this done. Eyeing Shizen and Temari, a roguish grin made its appearance. Unless one of you two lovely ladies would prefer to do it? Forget it, Temari said flatly. You pissed her off, you drag her back. What she said? Shizen said. Do we actually need her here? Naruto asked nervously. He'd really been hoping he could con Shizen into doing it, but Temari had shut that down. I'm already here, Tsunade said darkly from door. I'm not about to leave one of my students in the hands of a novice seal master, but you and I will have words about this later, brat. Naruto's shoulders slumped in defeat. Yes, Bachan, he moaned. Good, now get to work, Tsunade ordered. Making his way back to Sakura, Naruto unsealed a kunai, causing the girl's eyes to widen dramatically. Naruto? What's with the kunai? She tried to ask as nonchalantly as possible. Relax, Sakura-chan, he said reassuringly. It's not for you, it's for me. I need to do one last seal with my blood and then activate it. Unsealing a bowl, Naruto sliced his palm and drained the resulting blood into the bowl before his cut sealed up. Using a very fine-tipped brush, Naruto used the blood to paint in a large Uzumaki swirl on Sakura's stomach, making sure several points firmly connected with parts of the main seal array. Done with the seal, Naruto set the bowl aside and set his hand against Sakura's stomach, getting a nervous giggle from the girl. Ready, Sakura-chan? Sakura swallowed and nodded. Yeah, I'm ready. Alright, now this might hurt a bit, but try not to move, Before either of them could lose their nerve, Naruto pulsed his chakra to activate the seal and felt Sakura's body tense up under his hand. From that point, Naruto focused on feeding the seal a steady stream of chakra. For Sakura, the moment Naruto activated the seal, she was hit with a wave of pain like nothing she ever encountered before. It locked up every muscle in her body, causing her to tense up, but it even blocked the scream in her throat. After what felt like hours but in reality was only a few minutes, the pain switched to a warmth centered around her stomach, allowing her body to relax. Sakura could only lay there, the feelings spread in waves from the core of her body. For Temari, Tsunade and Shizen, the activation of the seal was fascinating from several different angles. First, Naruto was glowing a light blue as the chakra poured off him, but all three women had seen that before. Second was the lines of seals on the floor whipping around and being drawn into the last seal Naruto had painted on Sakura. The black ink rotating and rushing in like the water from a tub after the drain was pulled was very interesting to watch. The final thing that caught their attention was when the blue glow around Naruto began moving around Sakura's stomach following the lines of the seal. In many ways, it looked like Sakura was being eaten a fire made of Naruto's chakra. When he felt the seal stop drawing on his chakra, Naruto opened his eyes and moved his hand away from Sakura's skin. As he did, he saw a small blood-red Uzumaki swirl flash 3 times on Sakura's stomach before it faded away. Blinking at that, he grabbed the scroll he'd learned the seal from and scanned it for a reference. When he found it, he couldn't help grinning when he read it marked a complete assimilation, but the grin became a frown when he realized he was missing the required reference material that would tell him what the hell that actually meant. Popping off a clone to go down to the office and root around until it dug it up, Naruto turned his attention back to Sakura. His old crush was semi-conscious and panting heavily, which caused her chest to do some things that drew Naruto's attention until he forced himself to look away. "Oigaki," Tsunade called. "You done leering yet, or can we come over and check her out?" Naruto's head whipped over to Temari with wide panicked eyes. Yeah, sealing is done so you don't have to stay behind the line." Cringing a bit as Temari crossed the floor to join him, Naruto barely kept himself from flinching away when she reached out and grabbed his hand. If she perhaps used a bit more force than usual, Naruto wasn't about to complain since the alternate was the Tessen on her back. Since the fan seemed to magnify and annoy Temari's strength by at least 2, he was a bit wary of it. "I'm going to give you a pass this time," Temari whispered in a hiss to Naruto. "You didn't do that badly given how many of your preferences she was tripping, but I am the only one you are allowed to dominate, clear?" "Yes, Temari-chan," Naruto said, wincing at the pain from his hand. "It really was just a situation though, I swear." "Yes, I understand that, which is why I'm not angry with you, just annoyed." Naruto shrugged and pried his hand free, but before Temari could complain, he wrapped his arm around her waist possessively. "Well, I thank you for your understanding." His tone dipped down mischievously. "But I did get some ideas you might like, Little Miss Academy student." Temari blushed and punched his ribs lightly. Profoundly grateful Tsunade and Shizen were busy running tests on Sakura. "Shh, you idiot, don't talk about that where people can hear it." Naruto leaned in to nibble her ear. "Don't worry, Temari-chan, they're busy. I doubt anyone heard that." "Better be right," Temari groused, trying to ignore her increasing distracting husband. "Ahem." Tsunade coughed. "If you two lovebirds are done, I need to talk with the brat." "Hang on a sec, Ba-chan," Naruto replied as his information clone dispelled. "Oh, so that's what it meant, awesome." Reluctantly pulling away from Temari, he moved over next to Tsunade and squatted on his heels. "Okay, what's on your mind, Ba-chan? You said this would transfer your bloodline, Naruto, not physically change her in other ways," Tsunade said irritably. Naruto gazed at Sakura and didn't really see anything different, though he did wonder why she had her eyes squeezed shut. "Well, other than those streaks of red in her hair, she doesn't seem different. Naruto, she can't even stand up right now and all of her senses are out of control. I would call that changes." Tsunade sniped sarcastically. "Oh yeah, that was what was awesome," Naruto confirmed. "Explain." "Now." Naruto flinched away from Tsunade's roar and felt bad when Sakura whimpered and clasped her hands over her ears awkwardly. "Shiba-chan, you just hurt Sakura-chan." "Naruto, if you don't start explaining right this second, I'm going to start hurting you." Naruto sighed in resignation. Fine. Just keep it down, alright." So, according to the seal itself, Sakura was a very rare complete assimilation. Now, I didn't know what it meant, so I sent that clone off earlier to look it up. What it means is that the seal didn't just transfer the healing ability, It also remade her into a Uzumaki. I think anyway. He paused a moment. Physical changes had to hurt a bit though. You okay, Sakura-chan? It didn't hurt a bit, you idiot. Sakura whimpered. It hurt like. I really don't have a reference that works, but it was agony. Oh, was it like the time I got chakra exhaustion after Erosenin shoved me over a cliff and I had to summon Gamabunta just to survive? Shinaro. Sakura yelled, slamming her hand into the floor and leaving a sizable dent in the wood. I have no idea, Naruto. Squinting down at her hand, she blinked at the damage. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Tsunade said thoughtfully, mollified at the explanation and ignoring the byplay. That would certainly explain things. How so? Shizen asked worriedly. Naruto, do you know the main difference between a shinobi clan and a civilian clan other than bloodlines and family-specific jutsu? Tsunade asked in lecture mode. The shinobi are stronger? Naruto said, taking a stab in the dark. I suspect you got lucky with that, but essentially yes. Tsunade replied. Your average clan shinobi is physically stronger, faster, and with a higher chakra amount than a civilian shinobi. Now there are some exceptional civilian-born ones. My perverted teammate is a very good example, but it's rare. Where does that leave me? Sakura asked nervously. Well, you were never going to be blessed with large amounts of chakra, but you had a great deal of potential. Tsunade replied evenly. And now? Sakura asked hesitantly. Well, you're going to have to start over and relearn fun things like walking now, though that probably won't be that hard. That's the downside. On the upside, you now have much higher potential than before. What I mentioned before about stronger, faster, more chakra. Yeah, that. So she'll have to train like crazy, but she's gonna be even more awesome? Naruto asked enthusiastically. I can teach her how to train like I do. He paused a moment for dramatic effect. Train the Uzumaki way. His reward was Temari lightly smacking the back of his head. No one trains like you, she reminded him. Besides, she's going to have to relearn all the basics and her chakra control from what it sounds like. Oh, that sucks. Naruto pouted. This had to happen right when I got stuck as her temporary sensei too. Wait, what? Sakura and Temari said in unison. Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Yeah, I forgot to mention that, I guess. Surprise, I'm a Tokubetsu Jonin now, and if I get you up to speed, you'll be with Ino and Choji for the exams and Suna Sakura-chan. Suna Chunin exams, huh? Temari said thoughtfully while Sakura was shocked into speechlessness. She made to mention something but caught Naruto's eye when he subtly shook his head and mouthed later to her. Reasonably satisfied she'd get an answer later, Temari nodded back and held her tongue. Why, you're my sensei now? Sakura sputtered in disbelief. We were teammates less than a year ago. She hung her head in disbelief. I feel so worthless right now. Not wanting a repeat of the last time she felt overshadowed, Naruto moved in and wrapped an arm around her shoulder. Don't worry, Sakura-chan, we'll get you up to speed. Looking over at Tsunade, Naruto considered how to ask the question without getting shut down. So Ba-chan, despite our recent differences over shadow clones, does Sakura-chan have enough chakra to sustain even one now? Gritting her teeth at the reminder of the yet-to-be-finished argument, Tsunade reluctantly nodded. The seal forcibly expanded her chakra coils so that jutsu is a practical one for her now. She'll have to train and regain some chakra control first though. Shizen gasped at Tsunade's explanation. Tsunade-sama, I thought it was fatal or if you're lucky career-ending to forcibly expand chakra coils. Tsunade nodded. Usually yes, but the goal of this ritual was to pass the Uzumaki healing ability to Sakura, and it seems to have worked. She rubbed her chin thoughtfully. I wouldn't have expected it to work so fast though. I don't remember other Uzumaki healing as fast as Naruto. Naruto pulled out a kunai. We could always check now, he offered. Be kinda cool to see someone heal like I do. Getting blank stares from the women in the room, Naruto smiled hesitantly and put the kunai away. I was just saying, sheesh. Anyway, once you can use a clone or two to help train, you're gonna be totally kick-ass, Sakura-chan. Her head still hung, Sakura spoke up in an eerie tone. Tsunade-sama, do we still need him here? Catching the head shake from Tsunade from the corner of her eyes, Sakura lifted her head to meet Naruto's gaze. I think it's time for you to leave now, Naruto. You're kicking me out? Naruto protested. Why? 'Cause I'm still naked, baka. Get out. Pulling his arm from around her shoulders, Naruto hopped up and began hurrying for the door. He'd sort of forgotten that fact, but was Sakura bringing it up in a room of women? Retreat. Watching him go, Temari rolled her eyes. I think he'd completely forgotten. She told her guests. Wouldn't surprise me anyway. As Sakura flushed in embarrassment again, Tsunade motioned Shizen to help her stand Sakura up. I thought about saying something when he put his arm on her shoulder but decided it was simply too amusing. Alright Sakura, on your feet and let's get you to bed. You're gonna need your rest. You stat training with Naruto in the morning? When Sakura groaned at the words, the smirk on Tsunade's face widened. Well, if he isn't available, he said Temari could sub in for him. Doesn't that sound like fun? No, it doesn't, Sakura deadpanned. I'm a bit annoyed that I can't decide which is worse punishment. Oh, me for sure. Temari said from behind her. Naruto will just train you till you drop, I'd enjoy it. So Sakura, want to explain this little damp spot on the floor back here? Sakura tensed but relaxed as she realized she now had the perfect counter. Unless you want to discuss Little Miss Academy student, no, I don't. She took the silence behind her as proof of her shot slamming home. It seemed that her new enhanced senses were useful for more than what some might think. Making his way outside, Naruto paused and patted himself down. Satisfied he was carrying enough equipment for a small war, he made his way into the garden. Taking a seat by the koi pond, Naruto stared up at the moon. It's a beautiful night, isn't it, Nico-chan? He called out. You should join me. Between one blink and the next, Nico stood near the other end of the bench looking as if she'd always been there. That's a pretty neat trick, Naruto said honestly. Thank you, and yes, it is a beautiful night. Naruto watched her in silence for a minute or two. That seems to be a different sword, he commented lightly, breaking the silence. I assume you received it in Suna? Nico pulled the sword, sheath and all, from her back and holding it in both hands, offered it to Naruto for examination, but he waved it away. Thank you, Nico-chan, but I've seen it, and it is a beautiful blade. Nico reached up and removed her mask bearing the tear-filled face of Yugao. I've been searching how to thank you, she said softly. I know it was you. Not really, no, Naruto replied evenly. I only mentioned Hyde's death to Gaara. Anything after that was all him. He came to me, she said absently. He came to me and he knelt before me with Hyde's blade in his hands. He offered me his life to take with Hyde's blade. Did you take it? Naruto asked. No, I did not, Yugao replied. I was tempted to, but killing a Suna Council member would have impacted things negatively, and so I spared his life. She paused and took a deep breath. I don't regret doing it either. He told me of Hyde's final moments, and took me to the shrine he built in his memory. She shook her head in wonder. After that, I can't even hate the man anymore. I'm glad to hear it, Naruto said. Baki is Gaara's right-hand man and he was loath to give him up, but Baki insisted that his life belonged to you if you chose to take it. Yugao snorted. See, I knew you had more to do with it than you said. Naruto shrugged. Maybe a little, but it was mostly not me. Silence fell between the two as they continued to stare up at the moon and stars. Naruto, how much do you know about Yuzushi Ogakure? Naruto sucked in a breath through his teeth at the question. Not a whole lot, he admitted. I know it's where my clan comes from and that it was destroyed, but there isn't much in my mother's journals about it. I see, Yugao said with a nod before kneeling before Naruto, one hand pressed to the ground. While the Uzumaki were the most prominent clan in Yuzu, they were not the only one. There were several other vassal clans there. One such clan was the Uzuki. Naruto tilted his head as he stared at her. Your family? He asked quietly. No, or not really, Yugao replied. My clan was distantly related to yours and there was some intermarrying, but if the two of us are related, it's very distantly. That's very interesting, Naruto replied honestly. I'm not sure why you're telling me about it though. Yugao stared him directly in the eyes. Before the destruction of Yuzu, my clan was a vassal of yours. I feel that now is the time to renew those vows. I'm honored, Naruto said. But what about your oath as an ANBU? You're sworn to obey the Hokage as her personal troops. I would release her from her vows, Tsunade said, walking forward into the light cast by the lanterns in the garden. At this moment, you and Temari need a protector more than I need another ANBU, even one as skilled as Yugao. I suppose I can't really argue with that, Naruto admitted. Standing up, he straightened his posture and adopted a more serious tone. I, Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, do accept the oath of service from Yuzuki Yugao. May this partnership weather the tides of time. Tsunade blinked as he finished. I didn't know you knew the old Uzumaki oath. My mother's journal, Naruto said sadly as Yugao stood up and slid her sword back onto her back. Yugao-chan, there are 2 open rooms on the 2nd floor inside. As a vassal of the clan, I insist you take one for yourself, and I can send some clones to help you move anything you wish to keep tomorrow. As you wish, Naruto-sama. Yugao replied with a small bow. I will take my leave now. After Yugao left, Naruto and Tsunade stood staring at each other for a few moments. You were really pushing it upstairs, Tsunade finally said. Naruto shrugged. Only said what needed to be said, Bachan. You've accepted some things, but you still hide from others. We both know you have the skills needed if you really wanted to continue the Senju clan. Tsunade crossed her arms under her bust and looked up at the moon with tears in the corner of her eyes. That's just it, Naruto. I'm not sure I want to. My line seems to be cursed. Naruto moved next to her and gave her a firm hug. Fortunately, his growth spurt kept his face out of her cleavage so he didn't get sent flying by her fists. Bachan, I don't believe that, and neither should you. I think you should work on it, but I won't bring it up again. Tsunade broke their hug and ruffled his hair fondly. I'll think about it, but I originally came to tell you to get your butt inside. Shizen and I are sick of being stuck in the middle between Temari and Sakura. Do they always squabble like that? Not really, Naruto said, scratching his head. If they do, it's when I'm not there, I think. Tsunade raised an eyebrow at him. Well, get in there and let Shizen leave already. Naruto stiffened and saluted sarcastically. Yes, Bachan, I hear and obey. Tsunade chuckled and lightly swatted him. Smartass. Just go. Snickering, Naruto made his way back to the house in a pretty good mood. If you didn't count the council meeting, today had been a pretty good day. Ome Hinata panted as she hid behind a tree near the Higwa compound. As far as she could tell, she'd managed to give the crazy Jonin the slip. Activating her Byakugan, she carefully scanned around herself and breathed a sigh of relief when she didn't see any signs of Anko or her snakes. Looking down at herself, she flushed as she realized now she had to find some way to get home without being naked. Since it was late afternoon, attempting to simply scale the wall would only get her caught, and she had no desire to face her father over this. Scanning her surrounding, she noted that Niji was practicing just outside the walls near the rear of the compound. That must be how he kept his ability to use Kate in a secret, she thought. Stealthily making her way closer, Hinata waited until Niji stopped training for a small break before springing into action. Darting out of the bushes at him, she took advantage of his distraction with her naked figure to deliver several Juken strikes that dropped him almost instantly. Undoing the buttons of his robe, Hinata apologized to his unconscious body. Sorry, Niji-Nizen, but I need this more than you do. Leaving him clad in only his loincloth, Hinata pulled on his robes and ignored the fact she looked ridiculous. With her head held high, she walked through the front gates and headed for her room to change into something that actually fit. Karen. She looked up at me. She looked very young somehow. Remember what I said yesterday? I said, you're hurt. But you'll get through it. You'll be okay. She closed her eyes tightly. I'm scared. So scared I'm sick. You'll get through it. What if I don't? I squeezed her fingers. Then I will personally make fun of you every day for the rest of your life. I said. I will call you a sissy girl in front of everyone you know, tie frilly aprons on your car, and lurk in the parking lot at CPD and whistle and tell you to shake it, baby. Every single day.